That's excellent. Good evening, everyone. Are we ready yet? You think so? All right. Welcome to a special meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Monica. It's Wednesday, December the 2nd. And let's have the call to order first of all, please. So, the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Page, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. The roll call now, please.
Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi. Commissioner Fresco. Here. Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Newbold.
Here.
Chair Perry is absent, and Commissioner Perry is absent. Oh,
He's travelling here shortly.
he doesn't look like he's here.
He's just doing something you
He's
can't
here.
see.
He's presently not in his chair. And Chair McKinnon.
Present. Planning Director's report. Mr. Martin.
Good evening, Commission. Coming up on the next agenda, which is December 16th, the regular development review evening. We have a conditional use permit for the Ralph's Supermarket on Cloverfield and Olympic. It's a kind of a minor CUP for a wine tasting. We also have the 3008 Santa Monica Boulevard. It used to be a development agreement. Now it's a development review permit. So this is a project that, because of the zoning ordinance and the Tier 2 process, they were able to switch from a DA to a DR. So that will be before you at the next meeting. We also have a map amendment for a parcel on 19th Street. So this is another issue that came up during the zoning ordinance where the Commission considered changing the designation of a parcel on 19th just south of Santa Monica Boulevard. And because that hadn't been included in the reso of intent at that time, it had to come back. So that will be before you. And then also a text amendment related to office uses and whether or not a CUP is required for office uses in an existing office building. So the way the zoning ordinance was drafted, it's not really clear. It actually requires that you get a CUP, and we're not sure that that's exactly what was intended. So we're bringing that back to the Commission for your review and recommendation to City Council. So that's the meeting on the 16th. Coming up at City Council on December 8th, there's the development agreement for the Norms project, or 1601 Lincoln. There's also the appeal for 710 Wilshire. So this project went to the Design Review Board, which was a combination of the ARB and Landmarks Commission. They did not get approved at that board, so they appealed the decision to the City Council. So that will be before the Council. And then on December 15th, the San Vicente Historic Courtyard District Ordinance is going to City Council. So that concludes my report.
Commissioners, any questions? I have one. Mr. Martin, I can recall us specifically excluding the need for a CUP in an office. I don't mean just sort of on the way through, I mean specifically excluding it. Mm-hmm. How did it happen that the zoning ordinance diametrically was different to what we did?
Well,
and the reason I know that is I'm actually the person that read that. So.
Yeah, so the way it was ultimately drafted and approved by City Council, it does not read that way. So that's the reason we need to bring it back, and your recollection and that discussion will be helpful on that night.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Planning Commissioner announcements. No announcements. Let's move to our study session. This is the fourth night of the study session of the Downtown Specific Plan. It's item 6A. Commissioners, you'll recall that we have three areas left. One is community benefits. The second is the implementation of the plan. And then the third is that the Planning Department put to us a series of questions in the original report about the overall directions of the plan that they wanted some thoughts from individual commissioners and the Commission. So with the community benefits, we've touched on it in a number of the discussions we've had already. The implementation, previously to the last session, I asked Mr. Page to spend some time on it. So we had some discussion about its relationship to the loose, where elements would go. And tonight continues to be including some things, excluding some other things on the way towards this major rewrite of the plan that will occur before we come back in either late January or early February. And at that stage, I think we get much more into the details and philosophy of the whole thing. So again, if we could keep it on a relatively top-line note, the issues that are glaring, and we will move through it, give direction to the planning department and move from there. Mr. Page, with your thoughts on community benefits to kick us off, please. You're on.
Thank you. Travis Page, Senior Planner. I've been a little under the weather the last couple of days, so hopefully I don't faint up here. But yeah, so we're down to community benefits right now. We're going to do the same way that we've been going through the document, which is look at the goals and policies that's set up. I think what we would recommend is you recommend to us that we continue our in-house discussions with our attorneys and with city managers, figure out what our options are, bring this to the table so everything is crystal clear about what the options are, what the implications are of putting certain standards into the code versus keeping them all in the book.
So Commissioner Newbold has something.
Well, I guess I would say yes, that's right. But I also feel as though staff should have a perspective.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you go to the doctor and they tell you, well, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. You're the experts. Tell us these are the options, but this is what you recommend. I mean, I want to hear what you guys think.
And Mr. Martin.
And we would have a recommendation when we bring the information back to you.
Great. But it does seem sensible for you to keep working up what you think
Okay, thank
and
you.
what the other possibilities are. Commissioner Kennedy.
Yeah, and you might have a recommendation, but then you would say, if you keep continuing to run on that knee, eventually you'll need a knee replacement, or you can keep running on that knee forever and you'll never need what are the
Right.
implications for the zoning code? What are the implications, like pros and cons and those kinds of things in addition? Thanks.
Okay. And Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
Yeah, and generally speaking, there does seem to be a phenomenal breakdown in trust about this whole process with the residents at large. So whatever we get back from you or from the city attorney, we should have something that people feel is not easily changed and is not easily manipulated through whatever ways we have to legally keep open. So I would be inclined to be steering this whole thing toward things that are a little more rigid than maybe somebody else would, because that would try to reestablish some trust with our owners, which are our residents. Right now, it feels like it's open season. Developers go to the head of the line, and the devil take the hindmost. So that would be my philosophical position toward what we should get back from you.
So consistency and predictability seem to be high on the list here at the moment. Keep going. Number 3.
You guys are faster than I know.
The time taken.
Time allotted to turn this around. We only have, we have less than 60 days right now. And some others thought that they heard differently, but I wasn't sure if this body was expecting a red line document or if it would suffice to have kind of a errata sheet to show where we made the big changes to the document. Looks like Dave wants to
Mr.
say.
Martin.
Well, yeah, and I just wanted to add to what Travis is saying, because what we are doing is really an overhaul of the plan. I mean, it will not resemble the document that you have before you, so we don't think it's really possible or appropriate to do a red line, because we would basically be striking out what we have and giving you a new document next to it. So what we would propose instead is something similar to the zoning ordinance, where we are telling you what has changed, if it was in this section, where you would find it in the new document. So give you a roadmap to track what the changes are. But again, we just don't think a red line is
So
appropriate
let
in this
me ask you,
situation.
What I hear you saying is that there's a major rewrite coming of this document.
Right.
So you'll give us what is in essence a fresh document.
Right.
And over here you might give us a couple of pages where it changed from what we have in front of us based on what we've said to you
Right.
to what you now have.
Yes.
I think that's always what I had in mind as the red line anyway,
Yeah,
without
it's-
it being. And I think that's what everyone else did, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a fresh document,
Fresh
and,
document.
and greatly reduced in size. So
Oh, so they're happy already.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a problem with it as long as there's a clear, outline or whatever that goes with it that shows, like you said, where the changes were made. And then, if on page, 200 or something it said the FARs are all 7.5, that would clearly get redlined. So that's.
Okay. So Commissioner Anderson.
I just feel like I haven't shared this thought, and now is a little opening to share it, which is that perhaps this document is long, but I think this document is so well written And I don't always find that in a planning document. And I wanted to share that with staff because I think the vision is very clearly presented. I think the way things are described, it really gives people a sense of what the downtown is and what we're trying to achieve. So in slicing and dicing it, I just want to acknowledge that though long, I think it's very well done.
Thank you.
Mr. Page, number 4.
Number 4, how will Planning Commission like to communicate during the next months while the plan is being revised? I guess this is up to you, and our city attorney could weigh in too. I get emails periodically or phone calls. Just need to know if someone does send an idea, how should that be carried forward?
Well, I think that's a little bit difficult, isn't it, City Attorney?
Right, I thought at the last meeting what we talked about is we were going to do a rewrite and we would introduce that rewrite at a meeting in January.
And I think that has to be it. We can communicate with you, but not with each other, so unless there's groups of 2 or 3.
Okay.
Commissioner Anderson and then Commissioner Kennedy.
I was just going to suggest grammar on number 5.
Well, okay.
Sounds
Commissioner
good.
Kennedy, before we get to that.
Even though there might be, even though there will be a rewrite,
Yeah.
I think we said at a previous meeting that it was still okay to send staff, like typos and things. I mean, maybe those parts of the document might change, but in case they stay in or whatever, it's still okay to send you those things, just like we did with the zoning ordinance, right?
Yeah, that would be very
Those kinds of
helpful.
things. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's fine.
Cool.
And Mr. Page, it's okay for you to send us stuff and for us to respond individually to you if you need thoughts.
Okay.
It's just we can't have this group discussion.
Right,
so
right.
You have to produce it and go
Right.
from there.
And what Commissioner King just said would be very helpful. If you find inconsistencies or stuff, this is obviously a very draft. It'd be helpful if you send along to make sure that we get that corrected for the
And
next
now we
draft.
come to the grammar of number 5.
Do you even want us to concentrate? I mean, it's up to you guys. I know which way I'm leaning right now.
There has been universal agreement on that. It's a 7-0 unanimous.
It's been all the good writing on the plan, so there's a little left.
Mr. Page, Mr. Martin, is there anything else you want us to talk about this evening before we wrap up this? Mr. James.
Peter's going to jump in and talk about a little bit of the process over the next couple months.
I just wanted to give everybody here in the room and at home in TV land a sense for what we'll be doing over the next month and a half. We have started to put together a document that we're calling the pre-release notes, and this is something that can be used by the commission, by folks at home who are curious about the revision and the restructuring effort of the downtown specific plan. So this document will describe the general objectives of the revision effort, and you've covered many of the topics tonight: reduction, clarity, predictability, consistency, that type of stuff. What to expect in terms of how we track the changes. So that is the red line that you discussed, but we'll have a clearer explanation for that. We'll likely talk about the things that will not change in the document, and then touch on the timelines. So from the point that we leave you tonight to when we next visit you, possibly sometime in January and February with a new document, all the way to the adoption or the contemplated adoption of the plan sometime in summer 2016. We'll do that both for the downtown specific plan and for the associated program environmental impact report.
Right.
So
Thank you
that's
very
coming
much.
soon.
Ms. Frisk.
What
Commissioner
about
Frisk.
the GAMP? What's this? Where'd that go? The GAMP.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Where? I hate saying
I
that.
think-
Did you say GAMP?
I think Ms. Stefan has something to say on that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the Gateway Access Master Plan is certainly a concept that's developed, that we've refined through the last month or two, and certainly has developed, I think, enough momentum that we foresee it initiating before you take action on the downtown specific plan. As was already mentioned, the timeline to turn around the draft is pretty tight, so I don't think there'll be concurrent work on the GAMP at that time. I think what you'll see is that the work that's been done on the 4th and Colorado site So some of the preliminary circulation work that was done on that site will help inform some initial steps that we're taking, and that we're going to start working with Caltrans and our consultant on some of the bigger components of the Gateway Access Master Plan. So some of the circulation concepts, some of the steps for the crossover and things like that. So I don't think you'll see a huge, because of the sort of staffing needed to actually complete the downtown specific plan, you won't see a huge outreach effort until you see more complete version of the downtown specific plan, but there will be some background work that is initiated during that time.
Thank you. Thank you everyone on this team for your hard work. We look forward to seeing you at the end of January. We will go to the pedestrian plan at 7:30. That gives the team 5 minutes to set up. So you've got 5 minutes, everybody.
Don't get close.
We are now beginning item number 7, the pedestrian action plan. Would everyone please sit down and... What's that? Good. Perfect. We will be addressed by one of our planners, Beth Rowlandson, in just a minute, but before that, Ms. Stefan.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to take a moment before Beth gets started. It's an exciting evening where we're talking about the pedestrian action plan and the bike action plan, so it's a heavy mobility focus. And we've had a lot of changes in our mobility group. You've seen Lucy Dyke retire. Michelle Glickert has taken on that position. We've seen some promotions also with Jason Klieger moving on to parking administrator. So we have a lot of new staff, and they're excited about these topics. And so many of them are here tonight. And I thought, since you don't often get to see the staff that are behind the scenes working on all these great projects, you might want to meet them briefly. They're all on the spot. They didn't know this was happening. So you know Linda, but on the third row behind Linda, on the left is Cal
Well,
Koza.
wait a minute. There are people at home who don't know Linda. Perhaps you can introduce Linda. So, Linda, stand up.
Linda Wynn, our associate planner. She's been known for such illustrious projects as the Fourth and Colorado site.
Great.
So Kyle Kozar started about a month ago.
Welcome.
He is our bike share coordinator. So that's a position
It's
that
a good
is
time to start, isn't it? You've had a success right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing great. He brought the whole program to the city. It's amazing what he's done in just a short amount of time.
Since you've started, it's boomed. Yeah.
So he's responsible for overseeing all the operations and all of the sort of subsequent refinements we're doing with siting and making sure we get all the racks on the street, and also working with our partners in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, UCLA, and City of Los Angeles. So that's no small feat. Right. To his left is Carlos Morales. He joins us from the city of Omaha, but he's a native Angelino to begin with. Where he was the bike and ped coordinator, and he will be in the city of Santa Monica as a senior transportation planner, and we're excited to have him on staff. Also a UCLA grad. Mm-hmm. And Peter is next to him. Peter has been on staff now for about 5 years, but you don't see him very often, and he should get a lot of credit. He's not going to be up speaking about the PED plan, but was a major part of its completion, and certainly shepherded it through during times when Beth was out having her second child, and kept it going during that time. So Peter's been a huge part of that process.
And Safe Routes to School man too.
And Safe Routes to School, exactly. Started that program up and really got us kind of moving. And
thank you.
And last but not least is Rachel Zachmary, who joined us as an associate transportation planner.
Welcome.
She joins us from the city of Boston, and is very excited to be in Los Angeles, I think.
Especially in the winter, I would imagine,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And she will be working on preferential parking in addition to other duties with plan check and plan review and things like that. So we're very excited to have all of them on staff, and really excited that you'll get to see their good work going forward.
Well, it really is a great night to have both a pedestrian plan and a bike action plan, one after another. And I imagine for years into the future, we're going to have this night in December or late November where we consider the joint impacts of different ways of getting around our city. So, Ms. Rowlandson, you're up.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Beth Rowlandson. I'm the city's principal transportation planner. I also wanted to introduce Drew Van Hengel with Nelson Nygaard and Associates. She's here this evening as the consultant that helped us pull this all together as well. Oh, so close. The pedestrian action plan really falls into falls into context of all the planning documents and planning work that we've done really over the past 5+ years. It's specifically for implementation item of the land use and circulation element. We really have worked together as a department and as a division that there's consistency between the downtown specific plan that we've been speaking about most recently in the Bergamot area plan to make sure that the recommendations work well together. And following the adoption of the land use and circulation element, there was the bike action plan. The bike action plan really is a nice companion piece with the pedestrian action plan, and it did a lot of the heavy lifting originally of what some of the very specific projects that should be pursued, including the neighborhood greenways, which are also referenced in the specific projects of the pedestrian action plan. Over the past 2.5 years or so, we've been talking to Santa Monicans about what they see the role of walking in Santa Monica. It's really part of the Santa Monica sustainable lifestyle. People want to see more people walking and there to be fewer collisions. Want to make it easier and get rid of the things that make it hard to walk in Santa Monica. And everyone agrees that it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody needs to do something different, not just pedestrians, not just people who drive cars, not just people who ride bicycles. The action, we'll walk through parts of the action plan, which you have in front of you. Part of it was the community engagement. We really started with community engagement. We spoke with over 600 members of the community through surveys to ask them what they liked about walking, and if there was one thing they would change about walking in Santa Monica, what would it be? We've also been speaking to a whole range of groups and commissions that have a lot of strong opinions about walking in Santa Monica, including last September we had a public workshop that was also a planning commission meeting. Well, what we've heard are really the five things really came up over and over again that the community wanted. One is they really wanted to resolve conflicts between pedestrians, bicyclists, and skateboarders. They wanted to improve pedestrian safety with more crossings. They wanted laws to be enforced that relate to walking in Santa Monica. They wanted to make the facilities along the streets, whether they be wider sidewalks or parkways, to be enhanced. And they weren't just satisfied with marking the street as a crosswalk. They really wanted to improve pedestrian safety at crossings by adding such treatments such as flashing lights, stop signs, curb ramps, curb extensions, etc. The plan has 8 goals in total. I wanted to talk about healthy community, that walking makes a strong community and makes individuals strong as well. That part of walking is a transportation solution, and it stewards the sustainability that Santa Monica prides itself. And one of the goals that's developed is Vision Zero, and that's something that's increasingly popular in communities throughout North America. And what that would mean in Santa Monica is Vision Zero is a strategy to strive to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. And sometimes I pause and people look at me, well, aren't we doing that already? And in honesty, over the past half century, we haven't necessarily been doing that. There are trade-offs all the time whenever we do anything in the public right-of-way. And a lot of times decisions have been made about, well, is this going to make people wait for too long or longer than they're comfortable or longer than a published guideline says that they should wait for or they should be comfortable with. And now we're saying really all decisions should be made through a safety lens for all road users. When we did the analysis, we anticipated the demand, both the demand that's here, that will be here in the future in Santa Monica through the people that live here, where different land uses are located in relation to each other, the special places we have, including our commercial districts in Santa Monica. We compared that to the supply, both the sidewalk suitability, how wide are their sidewalks, are there sidewalks there at all, in the crossing suitability, are there places where crossing is prohibited or where it's prohibitive because the speed limits are so high that it's really uncomfortable for people to cross the street. And we overlap that on a map because we're planners, and that's what we do sometimes, but it's helpful. And what we do is, and what we found is that in many places, in fact, most places in Santa Monica, especially the residential area, that the demand and the supply matches up pretty well. There are a few locations, and many of those locations are at those locations where there happens not to be sidewalk in Santa Monica, which is fairly uncommon. The 3 locations that we found probably need the most investment, where we think the demand will outstrip the supply, are near the 3 light rail stations that have recently been built. Interestingly, at the same time that we've been doing the pedestrian action plan, the well-being project has been underway as well. So it's been a good collaborative effort. And what we really looked at were factors such as households that don't own cars and household incomes and health information about different communities, and we mapped that as well. And what we looked at were those areas that are in the dark brown are probably those locations that would most benefit from any recommendations in the pedestrian action plan. We did a pretty deep dive into safety. That's the number one concern about from the community, that who is affected by collisions. Really, everyone is affected by collisions in Santa Monica. The blue lines is the distribution of the population in Santa Monica, and the orange bars are the percentage of injuries that are fatal or severe in Santa Monica. And really, our youngest and our oldest are very overrepresented. And where are they happening? Thankfully, they are not happening everywhere, but there is a more distinct pattern. It's pretty, if you're familiar with the city, you can see that the lines are really happening on our major boulevards, and about 20% of the accidents are happening in downtown Santa Monica, where we really have the greatest concentration of people walking. When are they happening? There's a concentration in those evening hours between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. From a month perspective, they are happening in the November, December, January, when the days are shortest and the nights are longest. We also know that this is a time period when children and students are walking throughout the community, so that's cause for concern as well. Why are they happening? About 70, whenever a police officer responds to a pedestrian crash, they determine fault, whose fault it was that there was a crash. And about 70% of the time, it's the behavior of the person who was driving the car, and about 30% of the time, it's the behavior of the person that is walking. So it's not entirely one or the other, but there is a difference there. And how are they happening? At signalized intersections, I use the example of Lincoln and Wilshire just as an example of a signalized intersection. About 2/3 of the crashes are happening when the motor vehicle is turning left or right. And at locations such as that are not signalized, such as Lincoln and 9th Street, where just 9th Street has a stop sign in, 9th Street in Wilshire. Well, Wilshire just autos on Wilshire don't have to stop, but on 9th Street they have a stop sign. About 2/3 of the time it's because the person who's driving is driving straight, and they drive straight into a person who is crossing the street. It's an exciting time in Santa Monica. I can walk out the back of City Hall and I say, there are lights at a transit station. It's built. It's really cool. So we knew this was coming, and even before the lights got turned on, we thought about how people access transit and from where. And we know that transit is something that Santa Monica supports, but we know if people aren't comfortable walking to or from transit stops, they're not going to be comfortable choosing to take transit. This is something that we've included from the analysis from the beginning. We did include it in a technical appendices, which you received today, Appendix C. And really our intent in including that is the funding agency, Metro, really wants us to document the way that we did the analysis so that we can qualify for the funding. We've been pretty successful in the past as a way to build projects in Santa Monica, and we'd like to be successful in the future as well. So what did we do? We took that information about transit, we took that information about walking patterns and facilities, about safety, what we heard from the community, and looked at vulnerable populations and came up with our actions. They're in 3 types. Practices. What we'd like to pursue immediately are tactics to reduce speeds on our streets, both through speed limits and other things we can do, and to prioritize pedestrians and projects. To achieve Vision Zero, we're always going to have to look at safety, and that's in all types of projects, whether they are termed a pedestrian and walking project or not. So these practices are the day-to-day activities that we do as the staff of the city. Programs are things that we do to outreach and communicate with people. Things that we'd like to pursue immediately is this overarching idea of Vision Zero of Santa Monica and really pull all these different pieces together as one program. Over the past, we've had a series of safety campaigns that reach out to different segments of the population. We think that's something that should be sustained over time. With the Commission's support during the development of this plan, we've been able to develop the Safe Routes to School program, which was mentioned earlier, and now we have on board a permanent staff person, so we're very grateful for that. We have a number of wayfinding and routing projects and programs underway, but a new idea that we haven't funded yet is Safe Routes for Seniors. We go back to that bar graph where it's the kind of the 8 to 80 concept, where the youngest and the oldest tend to be the most vulnerable. So what can we do to specifically support seniors who are walking in the community? And really we want them to be able to do that, because sometimes the only time people get out of their house is to walk up and down the street where they live in Santa Monica. Projects are of 3 types. One is a 5-year. There's 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year projects. By way of example, I've just included one example from each of the types of projects. The 5-year projects are projects that we think that are most imminent. They, for the most part, do focus on those 3 station areas and on school areas. About half of them actually have funding already, which makes sense because it matches up with what the priorities are that we've already been pursuing. And in fact, if I did this presentation 6 weeks ago, I would say we're pursuing funding for downtown pedestrian scrambles, but just since the plan was published, the City Council has set aside funding for pedestrian scrambles at 11 intersections downtown. 10-year projects are projects that we've probably identified previously, or projects a lot of people have been talking about, but that there's not funding for currently. The example I'm choosing here is Olympic Boulevard, east of Stewart Street. The north side of the street does not have a sidewalk. It's within a quarter to half mile of not one, but two Expo Light rail stations. So it makes sense that there be a sidewalk there, since there are businesses and a school on the north side. And the 15-year are projects that started to take shape in this plan, but have a longer horizon. Santa Monica Boulevard is really the last remaining boulevard where we haven't done a significant investment about the streetscape itself. I'm not sure what form that would necessarily take, but it's time to start putting that on the table so we can start to plan for that. Perhaps through monitoring and evaluation, I'll get to see you every December, because what we plan to do is to, through outreach and collaboration with our partners, to speak with different groups, including yourselves, in that monitoring. And one of the things I'd like to get feedback tonight are the specific indicators of things that might be appropriate and helpful as we make decisions going forward. One type of indicator is about pedestrian activity or mode share. It's on page 103 if you're interested. But one of the ideas that we are thinking about is what walk trips is what percentage of all trips in Santa Monica. Walk trips as percentage of work trips in Santa Monica is a different element that starts to make that story more complete. And walk trips is a percentage of school trips in Santa Monica. Pedestrian safety is more quantitative. There are reports available about the number of pedestrian fatalities and severe injury collisions. Of course, we'd like to get that to 0 with the Vision Zero concept. And we can also measure the change in vehicle speeds on high priority pedestrian corridors. As far as other indicators, there's pedestrian perceptions in the built environment. We know that no matter what safety data, I'm able to find out that if people still are uncomfortable walking because they think it's not safe to walk, they won't walk. It can be even more powerful than the data itself. So getting at ways to measure that so we can move the move the needle. For example, downtown Santa Monica regularly interviews people about their perception of the pedestrian environment in downtown in particular. And we can also measure over time the number of projects that we build or how we change the built environment. Over the past few months, I've been speaking to numerous neighborhood groups, a lot of other boards and commissions. Some of the feedback that we've received to date is people would like to see a project in the commercial area of Montana Avenue. We hadn't previously identified one. A number of people have talked about having wider sidewalks on the northern portion of 23rd Street. That 26th Street, especially just north of Olympic Boulevard, is particularly narrow and difficult to get by with the spacing of the streetlights on that street. The plan itself calls for a streetscape project, and that 15-year project for Santa Monica Boulevard just to be the eastern end of Santa Monica Boulevard, east of 26th Street. A couple people have suggested making it Santa Monica Boulevard, really from Lincoln Boulevard to the east city limit. We've gotten some strong feedback about reinforcing the existing prohibition of sidewalk riding by bicyclists. We're suggesting that there could be and there can be very specific language that states that in the plan. We've also gotten a number of comments from Downtown Santa Monica Inc. Next steps. I'm here this evening. I'm going to at least 3 more boards and commissions and task force between now and the end of January. Right now we're scheduled for a city council hearing for adoption in February of 2016. And implementation is really happening already, like the scrambles. It's something that we hope to have in the ground as close to the opening of Expo as possible. And it's sometimes a difficult presentation to give because I'm talking about people who are severely injured and people who die crossing the street in Santa Monica, that every year someone comes to Santa Monica and doesn't get to go home, that every week someone is crossing the street in Santa Monica and doesn't go directly home. They have to go to the emergency room. I think it's imperative that we do something different about that. Walking is a defining characteristic of Santa Monica, that you can go anywhere in the world and you don't have to say you're from Los Angeles. You can say you're from Santa Monica. And frequently you'll meet someone that said, I walked to the promenade, the beach, the pier, Montana Avenue, because they walk in Santa Monica. And that's what we're known for, and that's what we need to continue to invest in.
Thank you, Ms. Rollinson. I'm going to call the public for comment, and then we will ask questions of Ms. Rollinson, or just make some comments based on that really excellent and succinct presentation. Mr. Rubin, you're first up. Mr. Landers will be second, and then Dr. Khan will be third. So if you'd like to line up against the wall while you wait, especially Dr. Khan. Mr. Rubin, who I believe has never owned a car, so you must walk a lot.
Correct. Never had a driver's license either. Thank you very, very much. Happy holidays. I want to thank city staff and the consultant for the great report. I think residents do trust our city staff, and they should always give us their expert recommendations, not based on what they perceive any political side is saying or not saying. I would appreciate that. The key is education, all ages. My gosh, during the holidays, when it gets darker faster and everyone's rushing around, maybe next year Santa Claus can get out and do a talk to the families at the library, anywhere. Poster projects for kids, everyone on this topic. The more involvement, the better. Seniors, more benches, more parklets. They're doing a few on Main Street, have more around the city. Shuttles, the things the hotels are doing. Hey, we rode on it a couple times. It's a great service. People want to walk when they see things looking good. wide sidewalks where appropriate, tree and landscape friendly, art friendly, well-lit streets, clean streets and sidewalks, like I see everywhere in Santa Monica. It's a great thing. Safe sidewalks. I agree, the bicycles on the sidewalk, it's a no-no. But I think everything we're doing to promote more bicycles and more buses and more people getting on the light rail is imperative. The only way to have an effective pedestrian action plan is to make things easy and accessible for people to get on buses, light rails, and bikes as well. They're all interdependent. That's imperative. So, I just want to say we're doing the right thing. We're providing opportunities for people to get out of their car and leave it at home. I never had a car. I know it's a necessity, but my goodness, if we could really get the neighborhood groups involved to get people thinking about planning and why it's better economically, environmentally, in every way to try to leave their car home at least 10% of the time, I think anybody could do it. And we'd probably be thankful for the people that prodded them to do it. I mean, people don't realize they are addicted to their cars to a certain extent. Everybody could help alleviate the traffic by doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Mr. Landers.
Thank you. I have a...
You'll have to give it to the secretary.
Sean Landris. I'm a resident of the Pico Sunset Park area, and I walk, bike, and drive. So very glad to see this pedestrian action plan. What I'd like to focus on, and I have this copy of a map which Francie Steffen has seen, and we discussed, Mr. Chairman, earlier this week. I appreciate the focus on the Bergamot Station area. I live on 29th Street, which is really the top of that hill. And with the introduction of bike share, I'm seeing traffic patterns at 29th and Pico that make me a little bit nervous. So what I'm here to do is to briefly explain that and ask that the pedestrian action plan prioritize some kind of safe crossing at the intersection of Pico and 29th. I know that the Stewart intersection is marked, and I know that there's a plan for traffic to move down 30th Street. But what is happening is cars that are traveling eastbound on Pico signal to turn right, and I'm going to be vague about that, because we don't know whether they're turning right to go onto 29th Street or they're turning right because they want to go into the McDonald's, which is just the other side of 29th. With only pedestrians moving forward and pre-expo, really people are either kind of taking their chances crossing at that intersection, or they're walking down to Stewart and crossing at the light. With the introduction of the great Breeze Bike Share, I'm a founding member as well, you've got bikes sitting right at the corner next to the McDonald's, and I'm imagining bicyclists, and being one myself, you try to cross that intersection, you don't know whether where the car's turning. So I believe that ironically, a pedestrian action plan would help address this insofar as a crosswalk put into the early priority stage at 29th and Pico opposite the Brixtons and the convalescent home would essentially advise eastbound traffic that there are people moving across the street one way or the other. And I think that would be important to add. I don't know if you want to wait till Expo opens to see how foot traffic works in that neighborhood, but I do think it's an issue worth considering. The other thing that I just would say before my time runs out is with respect to bikes on sidewalks, watching my kids learn to ride bikes, one place where I'm sympathetic to keeping bikes off sidewalks, except in one instance. My younger daughter learning to ride her bike does it going to school from 29th Street to Grant. If there were some provision to allow kids to ride their bikes on the sidewalks while they're younger, biking to school, getting them acclimatized, that might be a compromise.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Landis. Ms. Steffen? There is, in fact, a provision in the code about younger kids riding on the sidewalk, isn't there? It's not the case? I think we all thought that kids under a certain age or a certain size were allowed to ride on the sidewalk.
No, I don't believe that's currently in the code. In fact, there's an ongoing conversation going on right now with the city attorney's office and the police department about whether or not that would make sense as a proposal. And I think we're looking at all sides of it and some examples from other cities of what their codes say.
All right. Well, there you go, Mr. Lenders. Thank you. Dr. Khan. Welcome.
Just to follow up on this question, I think the code provides a definition of what a bicycle is, and the definition of the bicycle may include the size of the wheel. And with the size of the wheel, you may be able to focus on a younger audience and give them a certain allowance. Mr. Rubin spoke about education being important. I think partnerships are also very important. And one of the most important partners for the pedestrian action plan is, of course, the police. And I think the plan is really a powerful document, and I can't really believe myself that I like it, because walking is such a normal thing to do, and we shouldn't really talk much about it, but it does make sense, and I do appreciate it, and it's a great document. But what the picture and the role of the police in the plan gives me time to pause, and I just feel they are too important to be left out in the cold there, and do a little bit of data gathering and a few of their focused enforcement actions that they've been doing in the past without really being on the ball. I've written to you separately, and I spoke about how important it is for an agency to adopt a Vision Zero perspective, and how you can't really do it if you think about accidents as something that's happening on the street, because accidents are kind of happening, coming from nowhere, and they don't have much of a reason. Whereas and the plan itself is very careful always to speak about crashes and collisions, because here we have something where we can do something about it. An accident is wrong time, wrong place, and go on, next one. But collisions, we really can do something. And I think the police really ought to be called out on this, that they're not really participating in this. And they're not really strong partners in this. And this has to do maybe with the fact that they themselves are a very motorized police force, and they haven't really explored modes of community policing which are outside of the car and outside of a pedestrian zone. What else? I think that's what I wanted to say. I probably wanted to say something else, but I forgot it.
Short is good. Dr. Khan, thank you. Mr. Hoyer, welcome.
Thank you. I do have a visual.
You need somebody to help you with that,
No.
Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Andrew Hoyer. I'm the president of Santa Monica Mid-City Neighbors. I only have a few comments. This plan is very, very good. They came and presented to our meeting. I will tell you that the majority of comments I have heard from my membership regarding walking involves bicycles on the sidewalk. And this is a very important aspect. The main problem being, I'm not sure why it's not showing up there. It's on the screen here. The main problem is we have a law in the books here, but it's not being enforced. And I have had lawyers tell me that, ignorance of the law is an excuse if the law is not widely broadcast. So it is imperative that we do some form of education to get folks the knowledge that they need, because it's not widely out there. Now, I knew that there was a pilot program going on, and can you just maybe click there? There we go. And this is the pilot program that I was told about, but until today, I had never seen anywhere. So this is just outside of a parking garage. Why we don't have these at every single corner of every intersection downtown and then spaced throughout our entire city, every major intersection, Broadway and 17th, every intersection on 17th that crosses a main boulevard or thoroughfare, they should be on all four corners. Because the majority of the adults don't realize that they're not allowed to ride on the sidewalk. And I have had apparently some violent interactions between some of the members of my organization and bicyclists who just blow by them on the sidewalk. Now, I certainly agree that children should have the opportunity to ride on the sidewalk, and you should be exploring that. The problem with wheel size, I believe Francie has a bicycle with very, very small wheels. Although I'm fairly certain that I saw her today on a Breeze bicycle, but I wasn't sure. Right. I didn't believe it was her because it wasn't the right bike. But essentially, I think that was the extent of my comments, is just that we need to try and do something to keep the bicycles off the sidewalk.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. Jack Walter. Mr. Walter, welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair McKinnon, David, Shani, Barry. Good to see you all. I'm here to specifically advocate the Bergamot area plan on Stewart Street specifically, and maybe Nebraska, which is already a codified plan. I'm spending a lot of time, I work up there now on Stewart Street. It's a 4-lane street, and the average speed between Colorado and Olympic, or Olympic and Colorado, in each direction has become a very active cut-through street, or street that's used. I would say it's somewhere in the 45 to 60 mile an hour range, because it's around 1,700, 1,800 foot long street, about a quarter of a mile. It's very dangerous for people who are getting out of the car because the lanes are narrow. There is a parking lane there, and there's bikers on it as well, and there's no room for it. Under the Bergamot plan, the new already codified Bergamot plan, it calls for 2 single lanes, a bike lane, and a 3-foot buffer from the cars. It's already been voted upon. I don't know if any money has been allocated. I don't know how it works, but I'm asking you if you could in some way prioritize it and make sure it's instituted. Now, what's happening up there, I don't know how many people are being added in there, but Red Bull just took a new space across the street that probably has about 300 people in it, plus they're already down the street. The school's coming online probably about another year. And what I see during the day, now that I'm there most of the day, that people walk across the street all the time mid-street. Now, Pennsylvania is supposed to come in and become a no more clock? Become a crosswalk, become a crossing place. I thought it was going to be signalized. I'm not sure if it's going to get signalized, but I'm asking if it can be signalized. Please do it, because it's a very dangerous corner. And it's most frightening when I see the young girls from the ballet school, with or without their mothers, running across the street to the meter parking, because the ballet school has very little parking in front of it. It's a very, very busy street between Red Bull, the college, the Pennsylvania, all the food trucks are in Pennsylvania, people coming down Nebraska, crossing the street in the mid-block of Stewart Street with cars going by at 40 to 60 miles an hour. So since it's already codified, it's already in the plan, if it could get, and I don't think there's any other plan that's been codified, if we could get it instituted as soon as possible, becoming a very, very active walking area, and I think it would be a good priority to put in place to have it to continue to promote walking. It's amazing how many people do walk over there. So, if you would, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Thank you very much. That closes the public comments and commissioners. Questions, comments, feel free. Ms. Rollinson, would you like to join us back up here? Commissioner Perry, would you like to start off?
Sure. First, I'd like to ask, we saw the map of the frequency of collisions. Is there a map that breaks out frequency of severe or fatal collisions in the city?
Unfortunately, we don't have that map.
Is there a general understanding of whether the pattern is maintained? Meaning that when we look at the frequency of collisions map, that basically we would see a similar pattern looking at the severe and fatal
Yes,
collisions
I
map.
think some of the, when we have done the analysis, some of the indicators are streets where the speed limit is 30 miles per hour or greater, where there's at least two, most places where there's 2 lanes of traffic in each direction at least, and that tends to be on our boulevards.
Okay. And when we're looking at, this concept of the Vision Zero and incorporated into our strategies for pedestrian improvements, I'm trying to figure out how I should be looking at this. It seems like there would be trade-offs between improvements that make the public realm more inviting and an approach that was solely based on trying to address problem areas and reduce the likelihood of fatal or severe accidents or collisions. And I wanted to ask you, is that the way that we should be looking at it, or would you suggest a different way of considering these issues?
I think the way that we looked at them was at those priority locations. We actually did a weighting system where we decided where we should have recommendations. Safety was really the top priority for that. Then we looked at other locations based on the criteria, whether it be transit access or land use mix. I think looking at it as through a lens of Vision Zero does lead to some different choices than we may have made in the past. Certainly we want everyone to get where they need to go, how they choose to get there. It just may, I think making some choices that might make it a little bit slower for some people is an appropriate choice to make.
Okay. And when we're looking at the projects and the implementation part of the plan, is that the result of giving safety the top priority?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I imagine some of it is also what's currently funded.
Yes.
So, for example, the 5-year plan is partially determined by where the funds have been.
Some of those are other priorities included things that were already funded or things that were previously identified in an adopted plan, such as the Bergamot Area Plan, the Bike Action Plan. There's reference, a rather vague reference to the link as something that we knew that was imminent, that we wanted to be reflected in the Pedestrian Action Plan, but at that time we didn't know exactly what that would be.
And when I look at the 10-year plan, I see a pretty hefty price tag, $100 million for the improvements that are hoped for within the next 10 years. Do we feel like that is achievable?
I think it's going to, I think it will be a challenge. We've been getting anywhere between $5 and $10 million in a successful, that's be in a very successful kind of grant cycle, looking at all the different grants that we apply for and have received. Most notably the Metro Call for Projects and now California's Active Transportation Program grant cycles. So that helps. It certainly won't get us there. So we are looking at every possible opportunity to get the funding to do that and to have the capacity to implement all of those projects as well.
So if we were to ask council to prioritize projects that are currently listed within the 10-year plan, are there some that kind of stand out to staff that these are projects that, looking at it from a Vision Zero perspective, these, they're all important, but these are extra important.
And it's interesting that as we developed the plan, that we kept on. There are too many things in the 10-year. There are too many things in the 10-year, but we never wanted to push anything out to the 15-year. That just seemed completely unreasonable. So that definitely was a challenge. I think some of the sidewalk completion projects, especially that Bergamot area one on Olympic Boulevard on the east end, jumps out at me as something that would be particularly important. That's the one I'm going to say out loud right now.
Okay, thank you. And when I look at the document we received today, the Appendix C, first mile, last mile, pedestrian access document, I note that, I don't know if that has meaning or not, and that's my question. I note that this to bus and light rail, and it very interesting for the intersections for the walk shed area around the downtown expo stop, that the potential improvements are described as either comfort, aesthetics, or accessibility, but for the other locations, it's described as safety, aesthetics, and accessibility. So in one, for the downtown, it's talking about comfort, and for the others, it's talking about safety. Is that intentional, or is there a distinction?
My sense is no, that was not a difference. In fact, I think in the downtown, we in looking at the data, we noted that there were definitely severe, supposed to be meaningful and fatalities happening, and we think it's really serious. And actually, that's one of the reasons we're so excited that the scrambles did get funded, because that will remove a lot of the conflicts at some of the intersections. So, no, that was not intentional. That differentiation was supposed to be meaningful in downtown. Safety continues to be a primary concern there as well.
And just before we go on, this document that's being referred to was sent to members of the Planning Commission late this afternoon. There are copies down here on the desk if people in the room would like them, and they'll be available, I guess, on the web tomorrow.
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent. Commissioner.
Thank you. And a member of the public raised the idea of expanding the plan's discussion of the role for the police in enforcement. Does staff have ideas on how the plan could articulate what that role is?
The police department has been an active and fully engaged participant in the development of the pedestrian action plan. There is both some goal and policy language that refers to enforcement, so it explicitly includes, and the police department's aware that that language is in there. That is one of the things that we think is an important way to engage the police department, also through the programs that they support and provide themselves.
Okay. And the plan talks about how the large turning radii that they are a factor in the incidence of collisions. What can we do about that? What can the plan say to address that issue?
The concern is that when there's a large turning radii, that people who are driving their cars can turn really quickly and don't really have to slow down very much before they turn. That's one of the primary causes at those signalized intersections. A lot of the projects that are in here include things such as curb extensions and modifying existing corners so that intersection is tighter, that people can still make the turns that they need to make, but they're going to need to slow down before they make that. I think there is definitely room for strengthening that language.
Okay, and so when we see the discussion of curb extensions within the implementation section, that's what those are directed toward reducing the radii of the turn.
That is that's one of the benefits of them. I would also say a primary benefit is actually reducing the amount of time that a pedestrian is in the street by shortening the crossing distance.
Okay. I believe
You're a done deal.
That's
okay.
it.
Commissioner Newbold.
I have nothing to say other than I think it's a great plan and it's very exciting.
The best contribution tonight. Commissioner Kennedy.
Okay, just one moment. Regarding the collision data that you have, and I think the staff report might have said, that a lot of the collisions were when automobiles were turning left or going through an intersection. So, having a incident with a pedestrian head on, or when they're turning left. But when you were presenting this tonight, you said right, and so I'm sure it says here in various places maybe where this occurs. But do you have that breakdown of data of when it's a left turn or when it's a right turn? And can you just point it out to me, and I'll review it more in depth?
Yeah, it's definitely in there. It's in the presentation, but I can't. So just
okay.
While
So
you're speaking, we'll look
because
it
I
up
found
so
that
we can tell you what page it's on.
Okay, because in addition to where there's fatalities, I've also found that particular information really fascinating, because a lot of it has to do with the speed on the on the roadways, and visibility and obstructions and things like that. One of the things that I found, well, let me go through my questions first. Where would be a really good place in this document to add language about not putting furniture or landscaping or any other obstructions in the pedestrian through lane? We talked about this when we were going over the downtown specific plan, and at numerous times at other meetings. Would that be? I found, like, when you were talking about how going forward city departments and staff will approach their daily activities, and the staff report says new practices including elevating pedestrian design concerns in the development and design of all city projects, and maintenance and enforcement practices are also suggested. That's really great, and I think that's one of the most exciting parts of this entire plan, because it means that even if the city council approves new bus seats and new bus shelters, then the people who actually go put them in aren't going to put them in the wrong place if everybody's working together to achieve the same goal. So a question, but also a comment is, I think we should put, clear language in there that will make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen.
I think as I look at it, there's within practices, one of them is prioritize pedestrians in the project and program development process.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an opportunity there to be more explicit about that.
Okay.
You didn't want to be in the office the morning after I went on my evening walk on Worcester Boulevard.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You did no.
No, I know. I
So-
know.
so
You get
perhaps
it.
just
Totally
take
get
that
it.
I can.
So, Ms. Rollinson, perhaps just take that on notice that's
Yes.
important.
Thank you.
And I believe there's also
It's good. You
I will
figure
look
it out.
in the goals and policies. There may be an opportunity in the goals and policies as well.
Great. Oh, okay, good. That's really good to hear. Can you tell me why, or I'm really intrigued by the 15-year plan for 24th Street, and was just wondering if generally you could tell me why it wasn't 23rd Street or a portion of 24th and 23rd, because there was a comment, and you said you've received feedback from the public about 23rd, and I live in the area, so I'm really, really familiar with that area. But I'm wondering, because we're talking about connections eventually to the metro, to the expo. So there are people who will walk to it, and why 24th and not 23rd? Or is there is there a way to say whatever is decided upon 24th, or if 23rd seems to get more traction, can it be bumped up to say, to a 5-year plan?
The inclusion of 24th Street is specifically from La Mesa Drive to Broadway. It's one of those locations that was actually identified through the bike action plan.
That's
It's
what I was
one of those
wondering.
places where there's space and there's acceptable crossings for bicyclists and for pedestrians along the entire length, where there might not necessarily be space that can be dedicated or that might be comfortable along the length of 23rd Street along that area. So that is why the inclusion specifically of 24th Street in that area. If you have a recommendation to put that in a different time frame, that would be most welcome.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing what other commissioners think about that particular connection. But if 24th Street, and that sounds like a pretty reasonable reason, then I would say that to enhance that connection all the way to the expo portion, that little portion of Arizona and that portion of Cloverfield that really isn't covered should also be prioritized. So, you know, people that are getting there on foot aren't saying, well, it really doesn't matter if I take 23rd because I still have to do that weird jog once I get to Arizona or once I get to Santa Monica Boulevard or whatever. You know what I mean?
Understood.
To just kind of link it.
Actually, Commissioner, I think what you've identified is a mistake in the map. Yeah. It's called Arizona. It's actually Broadway.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
You knew that, didn't you?
We found it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice. You're right. That's so funny.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just still, and I still think the
scrub
point is
Arizona
taken
and
about
Broadway.
even if you get to Broadway, you're not quite to Colorado or to the Expo Light Rail Station. So that
Okay.
would be helpful as well.
Okay, I also had a question about signage. So we heard from a member of the public tonight that was talking about what I'll consider signage, which is, you know, those markings on the sidewalks about telling people you can't ride your bike on the sidewalk. I didn't really see, I saw some language in this document about signage, but I think it can be enhanced. And in some places where I think it can be enhanced are around schools as part of the Safe Routes to School effort, and also all over the city in alleys when vehicles are maybe getting out of their garage and they go down the alley. A lot of times vehicles don't stop when they get to the sidewalk. They just keep going until they get to the street. And so I don't know, but I personally, walking all over Santa Monica in every neighborhood, have experienced in a situation where maybe a hedge is too tall or someone just really doesn't care and they're racing down the alley to get to the sidewalk, and you know, you've got your stroller in front of you, or you're jogging or you're walking, and it's a really, really close call. But in some areas near schools, there are the alleys have a special treatment with and I forget, it's called something special in this plan, but the bumpy yellow patch that will make a sound. It'll encourage drivers to slow down or stop. But I think that if there's a way, and we just talked about how funding is difficult, that we should prioritize tightening up the safety around alleys as well, to maybe spray paint the stop signs sooner, so that, or look, you know, so that the driver knows to look left and right before they get to the sidewalk or whatever it is. And I like the idea of also the pilot program with the bicycle signage. And so, and my last comment was about real actual signage that are signs that are, you know, put for eye height so drivers can see them. I think we need more signs around schools that say slow down or school zone or whatever it is. And so today I went around and I drove around a whole bunch of schools, and I noticed that maybe there's one yellow sign that alerts drivers that there is a school nearby. But if you take a look at the maps that are provided in here, the collision maps, you'll see that some collisions occur around schools. So I think maybe there's a way in here to say when drivers are leaving main boulevards like Wilshire or Pico, and they essentially kind of dip into a neighborhood and they're approaching a school, those are the places where we can have better signage, because maybe you live in the area, maybe you've lived here for 60 years and you realize and you know that and you're going to automatically slow down. But since this is also a big tourist town, there are people that, you know, drive through and they haven't got the slightest clue. But when they leave the boulevard, they aren't encouraged strongly enough, in my opinion, to slow down, and maybe we can make it safer for kids who are walking to school with, you know, without adults. When we come back, I'd like to actually make some specific recommendations to council based on what we have so far.
Cool.
But I can wait.
That's a good idea.
May I?
Commissioner? Yes.
The information you were looking for, Commissioner Kennedy, about the left and right turning is on page 55.
Can you just clarify me? I know for me, you said in the beginning, but just the timing. We're doing this. When does it go to council? And because, you know, I'm new here.
Currently, it's scheduled. I have to write down early 2016. It appears that it will likely be in February.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So just another clarification. This is our only vision. Our city's approach for Vision Zero is this. This is it. There's not like another Vision Zero document. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
This is our first foray into what Vision Zero would.
Right. Yeah,
Would entail.
I wouldn't say it's going to be the exclusive mention of Vision Zero. At the moment, it was the document we were working on where we could incorporate it for the first time. I think there's been some interest in looking at whether we need a complete streets policy that's a little bit more broad brush, and that would be an appropriate place for that. But I wouldn't say that we'll never see it anywhere else.
Well, there's a bike plan coming up too, so.
Right, but this is there's not another reference I should be looking at. Okay. When I was away for Thanksgiving, I took a few cab rides, and they had these decals on the windows of the cab, and it said, "When turning, look for pedestrians," and then it said Vision Zero at the bottom in small letters. Just saying.
You're in New York City, right?
Yeah, well, you know, the motherland. So anyway. So this is just sort of we're making this whole plan and we're laying it all out and we're approving it and we're discussing it and all that, but we're also implementing it before we do all that. So how does that part, how does that work?
That
I think Ms. Stephan might like to answer this one.
In the chicken and the egg version of planning and implementation.
I mean, it's good that we do action and not just planning, and that action and planning inform each other. So that's a positive.
Okay.
It's not uncommon that while we're working on that, one of two things happens. Either we begin working on a plan and something is so clearly needed that it starts to take a life of its own and go faster. So that sometimes happens. The other thing that sometimes happens is that we work on a lot of different things and we go, yeah, we really should have a plan that makes these make sense together. So I think I would say the pedestrian action plan is a little bit of both. I think, as Beth mentioned in her presentation, we've been working on station area planning for many years now, and I have flagged for many years that the access to the trains, since they were going through former industrial areas in 2 of the 3 cases, needed help. And help quickly. And so what we ended up doing was moving quickly towards applying for grant funds. And these grant funds have really long lead times. And so what you see is sort of us going ahead and plowing forward to do some of those things and then realizing, hey, we needed a pedestrian action plan to kind of make some of these things make sense.
That makes sense. Thank you. So another thing, we don't have that design toolkit appendix, and this plan says, okay, we need this furniture to make it nice, and we need amenities, and we need signs, but we also need to remove clutter, and we need to get furniture off the sidewalk. And at our last discussion, Travis mentioned interdepartmental charter or something like that. that would be a really cool thing for a thing like this. And with the design toolkit and maybe getting the interdepartmental clarification, is that all part of what's going to come in that mysterious appendix we don't see, or how are we working on that?
That the charter concept is actually is explicitly within the practices itself about how we, on a day-to-day basis, how we do business, both as individual work groups and then when individual work groups combine on projects to make sure that the things that are the goal of the project are being seen from the initiation of the project all the way through construction. It's really frustrating when you're the project manager for a pedestrian plan and then during construction there's no pedestrian access. So making sure that there's that that's the whole point, to make that go through all the way, or limited pedestrian access, to make that go through all the way to the completion of the project. I apologize about the mysterious appendices. Appendices A, B, and D have been available from the project's website and were included in the link that we provided you with the staff report. The toolkit itself is a way, and it includes a couple different dozen ways that we could change the street. It's a way of looking at, we did a pretty nice job in that 5, 10, and 15-year list of looking at what projects, but new things are going to come up. People are going to say, I'm concerned about this location, what can we do? So the toolkit provides a way to say, okay, well, what is the issue that we're trying to address? What's our goal? And what are the circumstances? Well, that might be a good location for a stop sign or traffic signal or curb extensions or flashing, or a sidewalk with a median or curb extension, and what are the appropriate places. So it helps us as staff make decisions that are informed by the pedestrian action plan in the future.
I see. Thank you. So one thing, there were all those prices, some of which were really scary, and one of them that I noted because it's a corner I trip over frequently is that weird ADA ramp on 3rd Street and Hill, and it's like really steep, and there's like this whole thing, and it said you were going to tear that out and put a better ADA ramp there, and it cost $52,000, and that seemed a little steep. I mean, I did my whole driveway in concrete and brick, and it didn't cost anywhere near that. And so paid him pretty well.
I'd stop there if I were you, actually.
Yeah, no, so the point is, I don't understand. I mean, these prices, this is a 15-year plan. The prices are going to, even if that's the best the city can get for an ADA ramp, they're going to change. And I mean, do we have, what does that mean in the future?
So I'll talk a little bit about how we came up with the cost estimates. But we worked closely with our civil engineering division, and we actually went through bids for similar work and what companies are currently charging the city of Santa Monica for doing similar work. So for ADA ramps, we said, okay, well, what are we getting charged per square foot for concrete, plus all the additional things that we, as the city and the public right-of-way, need to do, whether it be traffic control, having civil engineer designed and signed and stamped plan. There's a contingency that's built into it as well. So we went through that process with our civil engineering group, and things are really expensive. We have other documents like the bike action plan that have specific prices in it. I think it gives us an idea of the scope and the magnitude of what we're talking about as far as projects. As we move forward, whenever we do apply for funding for something, we do a new cost estimate. Some things get less expensive and some things get more expensive, depending on we are early adopters, so sometimes when we're the first people to use thermoplastic, it was really, really expensive. That's the type of marking on the street. It's much more common. All the contractors use it. We don't have to get a specialized company to do it. And then also just our civil engineering group is currently realizing that there's a lot more projects that are being built, so we're not getting the really competitive pricing we were getting a couple of years ago, because just there's more demand for those surfaces and those materials.
I see. So, all right, fair enough. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, and the pedestrian coordinator person position. Can you I just wanted to understand that better.
Sure. Right now, the work that's related to people making sure we're improving the walking environment falls to a number of people, but it's a small proportion of their job and competes with a lot of the other demands that they have. That what we've found with the bicycle coordinator position, for example, is that person is able to both dedicate themselves to the improvements and also be the point person for other people as well, instead of saying, I asked this one person, then maybe they weren't the right person, but neither of them knew they were the right person. So it really focuses the attention that this is a priority and a responsibility that's going to be tracked over time.
Okay.
Do you want me to come back to you?
I think that's all my questions.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi then.
Yeah.
A noted walker on this commission.
I'm sorry?
You're a noted walker.
Good, thank you. This is a great report, by the way. It's nice to see a lot of data that is worth mining. It does raise a lot of questions, so I thought I'd balance them in your court. And obviously, if you can't answer them now, maybe you can email us. But one of the questions is, what's happening in May? It seems it's off the charts in terms of dangerous. And is there an explanation for that?
That we don't have a specific causation for May now.
Okay. Anyway, that's the one question. Another question, when you look on 57, the one that maps the frequency of collisions for 10 years, it seems like Wilshire is just a killer street. Yeah. And Santa Monica, which feels to most people about the same level of intensity, is this, nice little walk in the park. And again, is there some difference that's not apparent to the untrained eye here?
There is a lot more. I think it gets back to that land use transportation connection. Mm-hmm. There are a lot more pedestrian oriented uses and small businesses along the entire length of Wilshire Boulevard, where that's not the predominant pattern.
So you're saying really it's safer to walk in a place where they're selling lots of cars?
Well, it's there is a question of exposure that likely there's just not as many people crossing.
So it's a
the
frequency
street there
of people.
as well.
Okay.
Just follow up on that question. It seems like there's a lot less traffic to me on Santa Monica Boulevard. When I cross, it just seems like there's just not as many cars.
Wilshire Boulevard as well has higher volumes of automobiles than Santa Monica Boulevard.
And Commissioner, can I just jump in? There's also more unsignalled crossings that are dark on Wilshire, and people tend to stop and the car behind them pulls out and accelerates as the person's walking across. It just seems a more difficult, more dangerous road in general because of the speeds, the volume, and the people walking across it. I mean, if you go down there at night, I defy anyone to cross that road safely. And that's what the incidents seem to be saying. Commissioner.
Yeah. So then there's on 61, there's a list of the 10 dangerous intersections in Santa Monica. Are those rated in danger from least to most, or are they just all in a grab bag?
No, there was a clear grouping of 10 locations, and these are...
They're all about the same level of danger, you would say.
with the 10, it was about the distribution of all the intersections,
Sure.
that there were 10 where there was a clear mark.
Got it.
I don't have memorized, and I can get back to you about the difference
Okay.
between the 10 if you're
But
interested.
anyway, they're kind of all clustered together, is what you're telling me. And do we understand what makes them so dangerous? Could you put your finger on how far in have we looked at those intersections, or are they just a statistical nightmare, but we don't really know why?
Well, on the we know on the streets in particular, we know that the collisions are happening on streets with high volumes of pedestrians and vehicles, when there's multiple lanes, when the speed limits are 25 to 35 miles per hour, and with large radius corners. And for the most part, the streets that are described here fall under those intersections, fall in the intersection.
Yeah, but those same characteristics might be attributed to other intersections that,
that's true.
You know what I'm saying, have those same characteristics. So was there something, do we know, I'm asking a question in a general way, do we understand, if we had to make an improvement, how do we know what to do if we don't know in those 10 intersections what the cause is?
Well, when we did look at Drew can nudge me. When we looked at the intersections, we looked at we looked at the information about what types of crashes were happening at that location, and that we made sure that the types of things that we were recommending addressed the crashes.
We're addressing those particular types of crashes. Okay, so we do know what's making those dangerous, or where it's being dangerous, at least that far.
We've evaluated but have not memorized it.
Okay, well.
Commissioner, Commissioner Parry wanted to ask, I think, a follow-up on that, or?
Yeah, it was related to that. If
Yeah,
that was
please.
appropriate. Thank you. On page 63, the map is adjusted for pedestrian activity, and we have some red dots on Pico in an area that I wouldn't expect a lot of pedestrian activity, like between 28th and
Right.
33rd. And a member of the public commented on this general area, and also notably on 23rd at the southern border. What's going on there?
So this was an opportunity where we have count data at the signalized intersections for the AM and PM peak hours. So we know exactly how many pedestrians are there, and then we could compare that to where the crashes are happening. So it's maybe not that surprising that there's so many people walking in downtown. There's so many people walking in downtown, so it's not a surprise that there's those crashes there, but there are those outliers where there aren't that many people. We don't have documented people walking there very much, but there have been more than one crash there. So that's why it's unusual that they're unusual locations. There's more crashes than usual. It can actually be a very small number. In the case of 23rd Street, there was only one, but there's so few people that cross the street there. It was really out of the ordinary.
So that we could look at that as an anomaly and not necessarily something that needs some kind of a project to go in there to make things safer. What about that stretch of Pico?
Pico Boulevard is one of those locations where we have actually made some recommendations for the intersection of 33rd Street and Pico Boulevard. Centinela Avenue, we mapped all of the data, but we are in a difficult position. That's the intersection itself is operated and maintained, and in this location owned by the city of Los Angeles, so we could certainly approach them, but it's not something that we don't have authority to change things at that intersection.
And then closer to 28th?
At 28th and Stewart is also one of the locations that we do have, we've recommended some changes to the intersection.
And these are within the 5-year plan?
Probably not. They're likely in the 10 or 15 year. We
one
can
is
find.
in the 5-year. No, sorry, one is in the 10-year and one is in the 15. 33rd is in the 10-year and 28th is in the 15-year.
And we heard some comment about 29th this evening too, so that obviously is an interesting stretch.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner
Fonda Bernardi, thank you.
And I have two more general questions that you might be able to help me with. One is, I'm not clear myself, and maybe a lot of other viewers aren't, and what is really allowed to go on a sidewalk versus a street? And I'll just start. Obviously, people can walk. What about roller skaters? Can they go down sidewalks?
Yes, they can.
Okay. What about motorized roller skaters?
That I would say. So vehicle.
No, I'm talking
you're
those.
specific, so I would say.
Yeah.
Do you mean the newer hoverboards?
Well, yeah, the newer ones that are two pods, you put your feet on and you kind of wiggle your way down the street.
There's obviously new technology always
Right,
creates these new interpretation challenges. Currently, they're interpreted to be like a skateboard to be able to be on the sidewalk.
So
the legal place for them to operate is on the sidewalk in current interpretation.
and motorized skateboards have that same protection.
Yep.
What about segways?
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks. Oh, we're doing good. Lots of things are on those sidewalks. And then motorized wheelchairs obviously can go on sidewalks. And so the first thing that can't go on a sidewalk seems to be the bicycle. Is that correct? Is it my understanding that that's the first thing, and then everything beyond that can't go on a sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay, good. Last question is, it seemed that there, you highlighted a number of intersections where you say these are very dangerous, and they account for 6% of the fatalities. And then the rest, 94%, are spread out over the whole city. Is that a kind of a correct understanding?
I would just clarify and say that's the location where there's has the greatest accident history in the number of crashes.
Got it. But it's not like off the charts. It's not like 50% are happening there. It's actually only 6% are happening there, and the other 94% are.
You're citing something so specific. I think you're
Yeah.
looking at a specific page. It would be helpful to get that
Okay,
reference.
I'll tell you which page it's on. Let's see. These 10, it's on the bottom of 57. These 10 locations account for 6% of the reported collisions. These 10 locations, the 10 dangerous ones, count for only 6%.
The page number again, I apologize.
57?
57.
Last sentence in page
So
57.
close. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
correct.
And so, in from a traffic point of view, maybe the engineer, or maybe she might want to speak to this issue. Is it better to spread, let's say, a dozen painted intersections in the city, or one signalized intersection? What gives you the most leverage? A lot of little improvements, or a few more capital-intensive one in terms of saving lives? In a city like ours, I mean, it's a strategic question.
I think that with the preponderance of crashes happening on the streets with multiple lanes, that the marked crosswalk alone is not something that's always recommended as a best practice. That really, when you have more than one lane of travel, we have very few places where that's the only improvement. We will have a median island, we'll have additional signage. So I think while there are some things that are relatively lower cost, the concept of kind of the lowest cost, spreading that diffusely throughout the community would not be as effective.
As concentrating it on the major boulevards.
Or at specific locations.
Got it. So your first bump is a signal. That's, kind of like, or a left turn lane or what,
Right, whether it be...
But it's going to be expensive. It's not just going to be paint.
It's going to be a median island. It might be a curb. It might be a curb extension. It might be, if we have those things already, adding signage, the blinking signage.
Okay. And roughly how much money does the city spend on average a year on safety for pedestrians? Just a round number in millions, nearest $1 million.
Oh, good. My colleagues are shaking their heads too. That means when I'm shaking my head, I don't have a figure about the many different ways that whether you
Just very
enforcement,
roughly.
staff,
You
physical
need,
projects.
you need a pedestrian coordinator, I think, in order to
Yeah.
consolidate that information.
Yeah, I don't think we can make even a rough estimate because
Okay. Because at some point, we are hopefully on our way to Vision Zero, and it would look something like it costs X million dollars to save each additional life or to prevent each additional accident. And so there must be a graph that shows how you actually get to Vision Zero and how steep is that mountain in terms of increasing costs and decreasing fatalities. But somewhere there's a sweet spot there where we would be advising the City Council to aim for. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson.
I like that idea of trying to figure out the most cost-effective tool to use for improving safety. I, like all the commissioners, think that this is a great plan. I found myself, reading through the document and nodding and nodding and nodding and nodding, and then thinking, okay, which of these things do we prioritize? So it's great that we prioritized projects, but I'm wondering about, and maybe I missed it, if we talked about ways to prioritize the programs and the practices too, because they all sound great, but they also, it's also a lot of things. So
We did prioritize. We called them something different.
Okay.
That might have been confusing. That in practices we identified a group of 9 practices, and what's recommended in the plan are those top 3 on this particular slide about reducing speeds, prioritizing pedestrians and projects, and documenting decisions. I was afraid that having a charter would be too specific, but you guys are so knowledgeable about it already. And then in programs, we identified 13 different projects, and we are suggesting that 5 of them be for immediate implementation.
okay, this thing with the big exclamation point, is that?
We try.
Great, thank you. Believe it or not, I missed that was a priority. Beth, I guess, let's see. So a few comments. I think just the one other thought were the other issue that Dr. Khan had brought up, which I thought was an interesting one, about kind of the police, serving as community models in terms of being pedestrians and being cyclists. Is there room for that recommendation somewhere in the plan? Is that a separate recommendation to council? How does that maybe work?
I think there's room in there's definitely room in the plan or within this conversation to make recommendations that are similar to that. We are cautious about having very directive language about how individual departments, especially departments that aren't our own, are staffed. But we have worked with them, and they've been interested and willing partners. So I think there is definitely space.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, and I can't think of any other kind of department or. What am I trying to say? I'm going to use the word civil servant, right? Like, are there other members of the community that also could serve as models?
Yes, we definitely hear, and driver behavior is one of them that we as city employees, there'll frequently be messages about all city employees that drive vehicles, for example, throughout the community, whether it's a marked or unmarked, a service vehicle or passenger vehicle, that you're modeling. Your car says, the city of Santa Monica, that you're modeling behavior, and that in the course of doing your job in the public realm, that your actions reflect on the city and what's acceptable and appropriate in our community.
Yeah. So maybe just thinking about a way to expand that too. Yeah. That's all. Great job. Thank you.
Commissioners, so I'm going to ask some questions on my behalf and then make some comments, and then I'm going to ask Commissioners if they've got any other comments they'd like to make before we move to wrap this up, say in about 15 minutes. So, Ms. Rollinson, we had a discussion earlier today where it appears that 5% of commuters walk in the regulated industries downtown, and 2.5% of people self-identify in the census that they walk. That's a reasonable interpretation of the numbers we talked about. So do we have targets, say in 5 years, in 2020, that we want 10% of the people downtown to be walking, commuting, and 5% of the population?
The plan currently does not have a aspirational target in the same way that the bike action plan, when it was adopted, has. So we currently don't have one. I think it would be appropriate for the bike action plan to have one as well.
Yeah, I mean, because
pedestrian action plan, rather.
I'm a great believer in that what you don't measure doesn't get done. And so when we look at this plan, we see that about $150 million is called for in projects over 15 years. So to go to your comment, that's about $10 million a year is to be focused on saving 5 lives, because it's 5 or 6 lives a year that are lost, but there are considerable numbers of pretty severe incidents where people are maimed or sent to hospital. So there's a lot of healthy life that's lost on our streets every year. And that doesn't seem to me to be a great amount to spend, given the upside of saving lives, of stopping people being maimed, and more to the point, the startling statistics when it comes to seniors, the percentage of seniors who are involved in these. And having walked the streets of Santa Monica and knocked on people's doors at least twice in the last 3 years, one thing that comes over and over and over is make the streets safe for us to walk on, because we're losing the ability to drive a car. And so the very group that we want to walk are being marginalised. So the $10 million is quite a small investment, but it does require some things. I think it needs some goals, and just if I pick some goals, I'd say 10% by 2020 and 15% by 2025 and 20% by 2030, just escalating it up. And that is an interesting number, because it means in 5 years we have to double the number of people walking, which is actually a considerable and hard thing to do. And yet, if we don't do that, I don't see how we're going to get to this Vision Zero that we want. I do think that we should endorse Vision Zero completely. I think it's such a new, important paradigm of a way to think about how our streets work, that it's critical we do it. But in that list of 3 things, if you could just go back one slide, I would put prioritising pedestrians above everything else, because out of that comes reducing speeds and documenting decisions. And if you put that up there, everything we've talked about, whether it's signage, where people are being hurt, incident rates, kids, that becomes the driving idea. And you can say to the police or to the public works section, we're prioritising pedestrians here. We actually need to get that 10 million allocated, or whatever it is. So I would urge a sharper focus on the things we're trying to achieve out of this, which is Vision Zero and putting pedestrians first. And then other things begin to fall out from the numbers and the really excellent analysis that you've put together on this. You indicated slightly what the report card measurements might be in a year's time when you come back, and we're already looking forward to that. Do you intend to have 3 or 6 or 9 measurements? What will be the measures that we get to analyse whether or not the city's doing a good job?
Right now, on page 103 of the plan, we have about between a dozen and 20 different potential different indicators here. Some of them, and in that we actually identified the level of effort. Some of it's information that is collected already and is easy to access. Some of them are things that are difficult to access, and that we're starting the efforts to collect the information about how we have a lot of information about what's called journey to work. And the census collects information about how you get to work. We regulate employers, and part of when we regulate employers is how does your employee get to work. But we also know that at most those journey to work trips are about 40% of all trips. So there's a heck of a lot of trips that aren't that journey to work. And those are much more difficult to capture, but something that we're endeavoring to capture sooner rather than later.
So I saw that list, and it's quite a long list, and it's therefore hard to figure out what are the absolute key judgments we need to make. If $10 million is going in, have we saved lives? Are more people walking? Whatever it is, I do think there needs to be a focus. So I think you need to have a couple of key points to focus on: the pedestrian first, the Vision Zero. I think you need some key metrics, 10, 15, 20 over each 5 years, with the number of people walking in general, 5, 10, 15. That will give us something to measure. And out of this list of 103, as we discussed earlier this evening, there needs to be a priority 3 or 4, which when you come back, you live or die by those numbers, and we get a real snapshot of how it's worked out. And there was one partner that I think in both this and the bike plan needs real focus, and that's the school district. There are 10,000 kids that come to school every day, and we know too many of them are driven, and they're driven because the parents don't feel safe leaving their kids on the street. They create the traffic in our city, both in the morning and the afternoon. They are the major cause of a lot of the issues for the walkers and the cyclists. And how you draw the school district in, given that it has had a less than acceptable record as an organisation and institution, both in the walking and the biking area, is a key element going forward. So those are my thoughts. Commissioners, do other people want to make some short comments? Hopefully we can wrap this by about 9:30. So Commissioner Parry, I'll walk you along this way.
Yeah, I just want to comment, echo what others have been saying about how exciting it is to have a plan like this in the works and near adoption. Looking at today's existing grid and seeing the challenges that we have, it's rather sobering to now then try to anticipate what we're going to be facing once Expo starts rolling in. And I think about the relationship between speed and fatalities, and things get a little bit scary when we start to picture what might happen along Olympic Boulevard, both at Memorial and Bergamot. So I look at these projects that we have on the 5, 10, and 15-year plans, and I feel like there's urgency to just about all of them. And then the question is how can we be comfortable with this anticipated risk that we're going to be experiencing over the next, or for the future, and not find a way to leverage future funds in order to make these projects happen now rather than later. And the idea of waiting 10 years for some of these things to come online seems like a real problem. So I would hope that there is some mechanism that really could be seriously explored on how to make the funds available today rather than over the timeline that this implementation plan envisions.
Commissioner Parry, just before you go, do you have a recommendation or a thought for us tonight? Do you want us to recommend a faster take-up, or just you put it out there for the planning department to consider?
I'm putting it out generally. If there's if more precision to the statement would be more effective,
Why don't you
should
reflect on
pursue
that when we come to the motion? It might be useful to think about that. Commissioner Kennedy. Oh, I apologise. You said to me earlier that.
So I kind of feel like, well, there was the section of the document, which was Appendix C, which was given to us today. I still feel like I need to review and comment on, maybe at a later date. I assume this will come back to us again in January or something before it goes to council, because there's also the toolkit. So I'm commenting on just what has been given to us so far, and I've kind of categorized my comments into two sections, like what I would like council to know and what I would like staff to know. And I think I would like to recommend to council that that we do the study to identify, and this is from the document, these are things that I've pulled out from the document, that we recommend the study to identify locations that may be particularly difficult for people with disabilities, that we amend the GO system per page 72 of the plan to enable the public to prioritize and identify issues in the community, that we that the creating pedestrian intersection crossing signals that are automatic and do not where you don't have to push the button to get a walk signal. I think that's something that's like something we should implement tomorrow in all areas for consistency and safety purposes. I see that as utmost priority. And from page 86, which has a lot of really useful information, I think that we should create the complementary annual fund to deliver the pedestrian improvements consistently, study and adjust existing programs and plans, and create a regular program to evaluate existing projects for improvements. And this includes I wrote down here that I specifically wanted to call out that this includes, the possibility of looking at existing plans and if they need to be changed, programs regarding striping, and this particular comment about the programs and the fund goes to the already identified 5 immediate priorities and programs. I think that I would like the council to know that I really think we need to create specific language in the document about better signage around schools, on our sidewalks, around schools, on our sidewalks, notifying bicyclists about our laws regarding bicycles on sidewalks, no bicycles on sidewalks, and improving, I'll call it signage in our alleys, as I described earlier, to make motorists know that they need to stop before they reach the sidewalk. I do think that we should, in addition to the Vision Zero, which I think is, as we talked about, part of this plan, and I believe is an utmost priority, that we should adopt a complete streets policy. Beth, you can see like all over the internet, there are so many places when we talk about the complete streets, you're quoted in a bunch of different places, and going back as far as 2010 and 2011, many people here have been saying we should do that. So now we're almost in 2016. I think we should definitely work on it. And I would also say that we need to collect data about recently installed medians throughout the city to help guide our decisions about median location and design going forward. And we talked about during the downtown specific plan, I think, or maybe it might have been Lincoln, we talked about this, and Peter James, I don't see him out there, but I don't have my glasses on. He's not here anymore. Said that you might have that information, or that it could be obtained, and so I think that the commission and council and others should have that information on medians, the effectiveness or not effectiveness of them. And then my comments to staff are, I think that we should look at Stewart Avenue and Pico, and the area of Stewart and the area of Pico, as brought up by members of the public this evening. And because so my last comment is just that this plan is one of the most data-intensive endeavors I think that we've undertaken in a long time, and it really the information that we collect over the next 5, 10, 15 years is going to touch so many other plans. So I think what I'd like to know is if you can do is make an effort to have these maps online in ways that overlap, so that the maps are like each map that we see here. For example, the map on page 38, which is the highest observed hourly count in 2011, will have new information on that soon. And then the next year we'll have more information, and the next year we'll have more. So someone picking up this piece of paper, is going to go, well, 2011, nice. But if you're reading it online, it should say, click here to see the subsequent years, or a pull-down menu that shows you can, overlay in different colors, different years, but also different maps. So, the walking demand and all of them can be visible, and that kind of goes also to getting the community involved, because as the different departments work together to make sure that pedestrians are a priority, the community can work together with you hand in hand to make things better. And I just wanted to point out that even if there are some streets in this, plan that have, or some projects or some parts of streets that are prioritized for 5 years or 10 years, I think it doesn't mean that a street that isn't identified on that map isn't also a priority or isn't going to get attention. It just means that there isn't anything happening on that at the moment.
Commissioner Kennedy, thank you. Commissioner Fresco?
Well, now all that's left for me to do is nitpick. They've covered it. It's a great plan. So it's a small point, but it's a big point also for, just in terms of downtown and other things we've discussed. It's great to have a historian on the Planning Commission. On page 17, where you show the adorable picture of the Lee H. Young grocery, the little wooden grocery, and then show that later it was replaced by a brick building. That was actually not just the passage of time and the introduction of cars, but the biggest city planning project of its day. They moved one side of Main Street back 30 feet. They purchased that 30 feet from all those property owners, and then they bought 30 feet in the back from the Pacific Electric right-of-way. And some of them moved their buildings back and some of them rebuilt. And that's how we got Main Street. And to me, that was a huge deal. I don't know if we could ever do that again, but that was a good way to widen a sidewalk. And that leads me to, I don't have the page number right in front of me, page 98. You talk about widening the sidewalk on Nielsen Way between Ocean Park and Pacific. And of course, the buildings that could be redeveloped in the future that might move are all part of a potential historic district, and those are not buildings that we should consider moving. So that leads me to another observation as an Ocean Park resident, that when walking to the beach from my neighborhood and crossing Nielsen Way, cars are usually going about 60 miles an hour. God help you if you're driving on Nielsen Way and you want to turn into the post office, even a right turn, they honk at you. It's really an intense street. So perhaps a different way to get to what you're trying to do there would be maybe to make it one lane in each direction. So clog those people up a little. I know people don't like to hear that, but you know, they're going really fast there. And then we can get bike lanes and wide sidewalks and do a whole thing. So that would be my main suggestion. And that big project, by the way, it cost $600,000 in 1919, just so you know.
I'll buy you one traffic light.
Couple of curb cuts, you know, and we're there. So where did my other page go? I think, you know, obviously the primary goals of this is safety and getting people out and the health and everything, but it is actually also a measure to reduce congestion, to get people out as pedestrians, and reduction of congestion is a huge issue in the city, and I, you know, feel like maybe somewhere in the blah, blah, blah to make that point for people to just really know that we're doing all these different plans and they're all about making it better in all of those different ways. I just think that would be a great thing to do. Just short, not too many words. I'm against words. The other thing about medians, I know they serve many different functions. I have some medians in my neighborhood that just in that one little spot force cars and bikes to merge for a second and then unmerge, and it's one of the most terrifying parts of my commuting. That one spot, you know, because it's also near an alley and people, like somebody was saying, there's no stop signs at the alleys and the bicycles and so just, you know, median planning is a very sensitive area. I just wanted to remind that. And I guess that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fonda Bernardo.
Just 2 points. I think it's a great idea that the person who is putting their neck out on this one, the pedestrian czar, should have a working budget somehow. And I don't know if they do, if that's a line item. Not that other projects and funding sources couldn't assist, but if we want to make this more than just a feel-good document, we should essentially fund and empower someone to make all these tough choices as to which street gets fixed first. So I'd like to see that rolled into this document if possible as a recommendation to the City Council. And then the last question I have, has anyone done this before? Has any city of our size gotten to Vision Zero from the 1,000 crashes a year that we seem to have? What's that look like? And are we leading the parade? You know, what's the other examples, and how did they do it? What's the lesson here?
There's nobody has yet achieved Vision Zero. So the concept is probably at best the communities in the United States that have had it have had announced it probably in the past 2 years or so. So they certainly haven't achieved Vision Zero. The places in the world that probably are closest to it have a really different mix of how people travel. Everyone's traveling a lot slower, and that is how their communities are designed. So it's exciting to be part of the mix. Most of the communities that have Vision Zero or have adopted it have been some of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States. So I think it's somewhat unusual for a community of our size to be pursuing this. And Drew, if you have experience from other communities in which you work.
Thank you. I'm Drew Van Hengel with Nelson Nygaard, helping with the plan, and I would say that a lot of the U.S. cities that have adopted Vision Zero are looking at have approached the problem differently. One is it's a subject of numbers, and they're looking at thousands of people being seriously injured and killed on their streets because they were walking, and people made choices and made mistakes that resulted in severe and fatal injuries. So that is one difference. It's that you'll see as you tread into this territory. But what they hold in common, which was a part of this conversation throughout the whole evening, is that It's an interdepartmental exercise. It requires a change not only in the way the streets are operated, so that we focus on narrowing roadways to reduce exposure through a variety of tools that are mainly infrastructure based, to reduce the amount of time that pedestrians spend in the street through signal operations changes, reducing the potential for conflicts and reduce the opportunity to make mistakes that cause people to be hit by vehicles, and that the culture of the agency changes because you put, as you described, Chair McKinnon, you prioritize pedestrians first. So you say, how are we going to keep pedestrians safe as we're designing our practices, as we're designing our streets, as we're designing the way we communicate with each other, as we're designing the way we communicate across the city, and create a culture where we think of prioritizing pedestrians in all our decisions. And I think you're heading in the right track in that regard by saying it's not just about projects. It's about all of this.
So I think in answer to Commissioner's question, essentially we're leading.
I think, yes, and especially for the size city that we are here, that you're leading.
Commissioner
So
Fondaminati.
one last thing, I would like to second Commissioner Kennedy's idea to put as much of this information in a user-friendly mode online, because one of the obvious things that's going to supplant this is not just the physical changes, but the education that backs this up. So, for example, fortunately, we live in a city that's basically a giant grid. And so to get to any place, from one place to another, if it's at any of the diagonal movements, you'll have several different routes that you could take to get there. And if you look at this map, you can see that if I'm going to take my kids to school or send them to school walking, I could ask them to go down this street and over that way, or go down this street and over that way. But this street statistically is a lot safer than this other street. So all those decisions could be made on an individual basis if people had the information. So the education component, I think, is very important as part of this.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson, you all finished? Great. So we need a motion now, and I would suggest that we add something to the motion that sits in front of us, that, following on from what Commissioner Parry was saying, that perhaps we put a point 3 or a point 2 in there, that there is a stronger focus on immediate implementation, and that we add numerical targets for walking and numerical targets as goals and targets for reporting on a yearly basis. Most of the other things that I heard, I think the planning department obviously can take on board from the comments that commissioners have made to them, whether it's on signage or alleys or goes or whatever else, but we just simply need to strengthen out that we are actually aiming to change the culture here. We have something in mind, and when it comes back to be reported every year, we want to be able to judge whether it worked or not. I'd be happy to move that motion.
I'll second.
Second. Is the Commission ready to vote? I guess so. Let's.
I just want to.
Yes.
I want to speak to the. I want to make sure that the motion is asking City Council to make funds available today based on future funding streams, expected funding, and the chair asked for me to think about how we might try to articulate that in the motion. And one approach is to say that we'd be asking City Council to leverage funding for implementation within the next 5 years, those projects that are in the 10-year table that relate to the expo and safe routes to school.
Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable with that. I think that's a great change. Thoughts, Commissioner Anderson?
Do we have a sense of what that does to the number?
I start out thinking the number, and I just thought it would be a little bit
Policy
random.
level, you should.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it becomes a policy recommendation of ours to them about safety and implementation, and then they have to consider how the funding works. We've got what potentially the funding is on 5, 10 and 15 years. We're suggesting a pull forward, obviously, and that becomes what's available, and then it becomes a discussion for them, safety versus what's available and what we can do.
I'm just thinking about it. I mean, I just, maybe I'm wondering whether, do we need to sub-prioritize within that? I mean, I guess I just, it just then becomes a big list of things to try and fund, or do we just leave it to staff to figure out there's a good match with the funding program and, you know, something on the list? Do you know what I'm being clear?
I thought you were quite specific, though.
No, I mean, whatever, I think that either approach goes after the same thing, so I'm comfortable with that.
Commissioner Fresco.
I think the way Jason put it is sufficient, just because the way staff explained it, the funding comes when it comes and then the projects take off, and I don't know that we have that much control.
So I'd be prepared to accept that, and I think given that we've accepted that, that becomes the motion. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fundamental?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Newbold?
Yes.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Chair McKinnon?
Yes. So that is carried. Commissioner Kennedy, did you want to say something?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to point out that, as I said earlier, I was very comfortable with the motion, and I'm really pleased with so many aspects of this plan. It's just fabulous, and it's why I voted yes. But the information on the appendix that we didn't get until late today probably prevented some commissioners from having the opportunity to read it. And the design, we haven't seen the design toolkit yet at all, so I don't think, and I just wanted to point that out. I don't think we've had the opportunity to, I mean, it's not a part of my plan, and I don't know if it will come back to us before it goes to council. Maybe it won't, but I just wanted to point out that if I'll put it this way, if upon review of those sections that round out this document before it goes to council, maybe if there's a night when we have a night that isn't overwhelmed with things and the commission feels it needs to comment, we could add it on so that we can, if needed.
Well, we'll note that. Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. So I will close that part of this agenda. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back while they set up for the bike action plan. And Commissioners, just one final thing. My observation is that going long past 11 o'clock is never a good idea. So I'm going to aim to close this at 11 o'clock this evening. That will give us about an hour and a half. No.
I think we could get it done in half an hour.
Well, let's see. I'm just saying it's not going to go long tonight. Thanks. We'll be back. No. I'm just telling you. We'll close this half an hour early. Okay, everybody, I think we'll now resume. Planning Commission is now back in session. Item 8A. Thank you. If everyone would like to resume their seats, this is the Bike Action Plan Implementation Update. The Bike Plan was adopted 4 years ago, and part of it was annual reporting. And I think we're about to hear an absolutely spectacular report of success over the past year. And with us is Michelle Glickett. Ms. Glickett, if you'd like to take it away. You're good.
Okay. Or is it just me? I'm a low talker. It happens. It has been a great year. And what a nice night to be here. A great night to talk about mobility, and biking is a huge piece of that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the progress report and kind of talk about what we've been doing over the past year. So the bike plan did have, it laid out a lot of great bikeways, but we knew that bikeways alone were not going to be enough to get us to our goals. And we also knew that we couldn't do it alone. The bike plan laid out a lot of ways to get those new riders out there, a lot of programs to celebrate, to educate. Barriers have to be removed to get people biking. Just laying out the paint doesn't do it alone. So we've been working over the past few years on all of those things, the physical, the programmatic. We can't do it alone, and that's what those principles are all about. We've been working a lot with and collaborating with our community partners. Santa Monica Spoke, you've probably seen them at just about every event we're at. They are truly our partner in all of this. And a big piece of the progress is from those collaborative relationships we've built. We have been working with the school a lot over the past 4 years, and we'll continue to do so. This last year has been an exciting one of many firsts. We got to celebrate our first neighborhood greenway on Michigan Avenue, known as the Michigan Avenue Greenway. That's phase 1 image there. The bikeway, I'm not sure you've been able to get this private tour, but it is complete. It's not open, but it's complete. And I'm looking forward to being able to ride to Culver City and even down to USC if I so desire. In addition to that, very exciting, 3 weeks ago was our launch for Bruce Bike Share. We've already seen over 2,100 members, and let me look here at my notes, 8,760 trips. We're doing great, and I'm looking forward to the next year of that. Protected bikeways, our first on Pico and our first on Michigan as part of the Safe Routes to School project. The zoning ordinance update, many of you sat through many meetings and hours. And the bike plan and those bike parking requirements were a part of that. We now have a very robust section that includes requirements long-term and short-term for residential. We're going to now be looking at a tenant improvement and trying to work with them on including some of those requirements on site. Change of commercial use may be triggering that as well. We've got requirements now for showers and lockers, and a new provision that will be allowing folks with some study effort to replace auto parking with bicycle parking. Some highlights from last year. We were at a lot of events. We were out there probably a few each month. One of the highlights is the Santa Monica Festival, one of the largest that we have in our city. And we've kind of become a prominent figure there. It's known as the Bike Hub. And we're usually stationed at that northwest corner near the Bike Valet. The Bike Valet this year, we parked over 485 bikes. And at our little hub here, several tents were displayed. People got to try out, families were there with their children. We had over 100 children who took our bike skills course. Families were there and they were able to test out cargo bikes. So they could put the kids in and go for a ride and see if that was something they might be interested in. There were 50 other bikes there that they could test out and see if that was, the bike for them. Samohai Solar Alliance, we do a lot of work with them on the Bike It Walk It days. They were there giving out helmets, 52 helmets they gave out that day. It's a great way for us as staff to have a presence with our community. And that community isn't just our residents. People come from all over the west side to that festival. So great exposure and a lot of fun. And we need to bring out that fun. That was one of our goals. We had this little thing over at the corner of Memorial Park. It was our second bike swap, and it was sort of thrown together. We managed, and a lot of people were happy. I don't recall the number. It was maybe 50 or so. I think we had some very folks walk away with a newly used bicycle. Most recently, you might have seen, we had a nice little ride up on the Family Bike Festival. And this is our second, so it was a lot different this time. Our very first happened over here at the Civic, and a lot of staff time. This one truly came from the community. This was, the principal was front and center with parents from McKinley Elementary. It was on their campus that day, and tons of their volunteers really took over. They had, what you see up on that upper corner there is the website. They actually built their own website for this one-day event. And we had our usual community ride. There was bike skills that Santa Monica Spoke provided, a bevy of events. And it wasn't just bikes. There was a rock wall. You know, there were other interesting things, and that really brought the fun. It was clear that this really came from within, because there were over 600 attendees. That's probably, you know, on a nice, cold, windy, somewhat rainy Sunday. In our bike plan, our report card does contain a handful of things. Some of those things aren't always available every year, like our bike counts are done biannually. This year, though, we did start that. So we were able to look back at the summer counts that we took. And summer counts are done in our downtown and along Main Street. So a little bit of a snapshot to see how we're progressing. And we did see a 5% increase in ridership over it's the weekend that we count on the summer. It's a Saturday and a Sunday. We got some more bike racks out there at the schools, which was great. I know that was a long time coming for some folks who've been working on that from behind the scenes. As far as Drive Alone goes, that's something we track, through our large employers on a regular basis and have for many years. We saw a slight decrease in Drive Alone from 61% down to 59%. Some of the other things that we report on is crash data. You guys talked a lot about that during the PED plan. I don't have an annual number, but I did look back at October of last year and compared it to October of this year. And we did see a decrease of about 15%. We had 94 crashes this year versus 110 last year at that time. I'm looking forward to the annual report where we can do some more analysis on that. Bike-friendly business, I don't know if you guys are that familiar with it, but it's kind of a subset of the bike-friendly community program. And we saw 6 new businesses sign up for that. It's a way to get them to promote and highlight them for some of the things they do. And it's not just about providing a bike rack for your employees. It's about really encouraging, it's the short-term parking, or it's just the maybe a discount for someone. It's about those folks who really believe in what we're doing in Santa Monica and that mobility and encouraging folks to bike to their business. The Bike-Friendly Community Program, that's that Silver Award we most recently received about a year and a half ago. We're still at silver, but I'm looking forward to applying in the next couple of months and getting us to gold. This is a little tough to read, but this is about that program, and it's an extensive program and an extensive application. And what you can't see are all of the E's over here: education, engineering, enforcement, and evaluation. So the program itself really sets up a city to be, it's a report card. It's another report card, a very intensive report card. But what this was in the very beginning when we got that bronze award and had to apply was sort of a catalyst for our bike plan. And in the bike plan, we look at the physical stuff, the engineering, and we continue to evaluate ourselves. So it's been a good catalyst for us, and we're going to continue, and I'm fairly certain we're going to get gold. We'll be shooting for platinum shortly after that. Oh, and there is diamond. I shouldn't set my sights so low. We're going to go for diamond. We also track, as part of that report card, events that we have bike valet at. Bike valet isn't just about making biking convenient. It's also kind of showcasing what's important in Santa Monica and how it might be the easiest way, but it's just another way to highlight that bike community that we have and the importance of that. Network completeness is always a big one that we look at. I know, another fuzzy map for you. So this is from the bike plan, and this was our aspiration in 5 years to lay out all of these different kinds of bikeways. We've got climbing lanes and separated bike paths and side paths and bike routes. So how are we doing? And when the bike plan was adopted in 2011, we set out to do this infrastructure piece, and that was kind of piggybacking on the Public Works program to do resurfacing. And we've come far. We've done a lot, and I'll show you here in the next couple of slides. So this is about 2 years of progress after the bike plan was adopted. And where we're at now, well, that wasn't very effective, was it? Okay, let me do this. I should have added some fancy slide movement there. So where we're at now, boom, we have, in the past 4 years, we've done a lot. What you see up here in the bright green are the completed bikeways that we set out to do in that 5-year plan. Some are sharrows, some are those climbing lanes, which have lanes on one side, sharrows on the other. And the dashed boxes are the projects that remain. Some of those in red we'll be working on next year, and I'm going to get to our next year in just a second. Now the black dashes there, it's like San Vicente and Ocean Avenue, where we want to actually see double bike lanes and have room for people to travel side by side comfortably and widen those things. 17th Street's in the middle, left to be done. Little Stewart up there on the eastern end, and some neighborhood greenways left at Ashland. We're hoping to progress maybe a little bit more on another neighborhood greenway on Washington, which is in our 20-year plan. So part of this, the plan was flexible. It allows us to move things up, push things back, and kind of adjust, because it is going to be a year of adjustment. So one of the things that we said in our bike plan is we aspired to have 15 to 35% of our trips by bicycle. And one of the things we've been working on is tracking that and getting those programs in place and doing the physical infrastructure. This next year, I probably could have put a few more things up there as well. So what we've got going this next year to get us to that 15% is the Safe Routes to School program. You heard Francie talk about our permanent coordinator, who's been fantastic, and he will continue to work with our schools. We'll continue that Bike It, Walk It support. And also we're going to be able to do second phase of Mango, which is near the Edison School. So along those lines, we have those Kiddical Mass weekend rides, which really bring the fun, and also allow parents to collaborate with one another, discuss the challenges, the best routes, and how they're making it work. Protected bikeways has been a big one on our list, and that map you saw, those black dashes that were left, were mostly those protected bikeways and those big infrastructure projects. We've been progressing and those, doing the low-hanging fruit, as we've said, and now it's that time. We're at that point where we've got to really hunker down and do some of those larger projects. So this year, we're lucky we received some funding to do some of that study, and that includes the beach bike path widening. We're going to be working with CCS on that project. They'll be looking at around the pier and the northern end and some improvements on Oceanfront Walk. There's the Pier Bridge project right through our Public Works Department. So we'll be working with them on a bike ramp to connect the path to the pier. 17th Street, we want to progress that one forward and do outreach and some more finalizing on the design of what the 17th Street protected bikeway would look like. 20th Street, we received a grant to work on what we call, it's another piece of Mango. Mango basically kind of dead ends at about 19th. And there's a small little funky path that gets you over to 20th.
Well,
and then
someone
at
stole
20th.
the land.
Yes. So we received a grant to begin looking at the design and what that might look like and do some outreach. And that will then connect eventually to Bergamot Station. So that's another gap closure coming. Esplanade and the Callan Klein are already underway, and we'll be seeing those open up. Some of the things we're going to be working on with the police department are the motorist and cyclist education piece. We'll be doing a safety campaign that focuses on, from the driver's perspective, the cyclists, pedestrians. Really excited about working with them. They're also, a part of that Vision Zero group that we talk about. So we've kind of started to build some new collaboration with that, and that's important in the bike plan. Certainly we'll be seeing some more bike racks and celebrating with a bike counter. I know, what's that, right? So this is a way that really, again, it's celebrating, it's encouraging, it's a commitment, and we can share our data. And that's what I heard tonight was a big thing for you guys. So as part of the bike plan, I didn't have it up on this slide, we'll be making more of this information and our report card available online. So our webpage definitely needs a little bit of a facelift with that effort. I've just laid out this grand previous 4 years and this year ahead, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to have some good progress, and we're going to see that 5%, jump up a bit, but 15% to see it triple in 1 year, even with Expo coming, I'm just not certain that we're gonna get there. So there's got to be some thought, and that's what we're here tonight to talk about, is what are some of the other things that we need to bring up, to elevate, to help us get there. We know it's going to be a great year for mobility. I'm really excited about a new emphasis on that. In our department, you can see we're really thrilled about having these new folks with us who are very talented to help us. But as far as the bike plan itself goes, with some of the programs and things, we need some feedback about that. So I hope
Thank
that
you.
was.
Take a seat. We'll hear from the public, and then we'll come back and talk to you in a minute. Mr. Landris, and then Mr. Hoyer.
As long as I'm here, I thought I'd stay for the bikes.
Excellent.
Sean Landris, Sunset Park. I think we fall into the category of people who are not avid cyclists, but we have been activated by critical mass, as Francie knows, and by other things. And so I want to say how important and exciting this update is as someone who, I grew up riding my bike in Santa Monica years and years and years ago, but today to see the changes that really make it possible to move around safely. That having been said, I just want to put a few things out there. One is equity. I'm a social services commissioner as well, so this is always a hat that I'm wearing. Want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're thinking about all of Santa Monica and inclusion and those pieces. So, for example, when we look at bike share, is it in the Pico neighborhood where it needs to be? And are we doing the things that we need to do to get people active there? Second is the Expo Bikeway may not be officially open, but you can bike from Stewart to 23rd at this point most days without any trouble. What it leads me to worry about, and this is what I want to ask about, is as an occasional cyclist, and we learned from the Motor City presentation a few weeks ago that was out on 5th Street, it's people like me, families like mine, that will create the critical mass of cyclists because we're the occasional ones who will feel safe doing it. Driving north-south, I believe, 20th Street, 23rd Street, north of Expo, we need more instructions about how to move across. Do you want us to cross the street and use the crosswalks? If so, can you give us lines to do it safely? Or do you want us to cross multiple lanes of traffic to get to a left-hand pocket? I don't know, so I need that clarity. And the last place where I think that would help is in the protected bike lane. I know the bicycle pathway signs are coming, but as a person going to the beach, when I come out onto Pico, going through that beautiful protected bike lane, and then I get to this point where, wait, I want to go down Pico, but no, I have to turn onto 7th. Signage saying, do this to get there would be really helpful. So the summary is, I think the city's doing everything right. I think this plan has been, I mean, it's been transformative for us and for our family. And getting those bike racks at Grant and other elementary schools in the front of the school where people can see that parents and kids are biking together is huge. But we need more guidance, and we need to feel safer as we go so that we can add to the number of trips that we're willing to take by bike. Finally, just to clarify my earlier comment, can I finish the sentence?
The sentence, yes.
The sentence. For kids riding bikes on sidewalks, my suggestion was looking at areas around schools and potentially times of day, rather than saying all kids could ride bikes anywhere on the sidewalks, but focusing on safe routes to school and sidewalks in that context might be a compromise.
That was a long sentence, but a good one. Thank you. Mr. Hoyer.
That sentence was worth the wait. Yes, I do have another item.
Mr. Hoyer, would you like to start? Then Carl will help you get the slide up that you want to talk about.
There we go. Well, you know what? It's not a very important slide. My name is Andrew Hoyer. I'm president of Mid-City Neighbors. I am very grateful of the bike action that we have currently. The comment I was going to make in the photo is we need protected bike lanes. Very, very much. I had a plan to do a whole PowerPoint with several photos. I only managed to get one because I don't take my phone. I take nothing to the beach, not even my house keys. But when I ride my bicycle back Broadway from the beach, every day, every time at Lincoln, the cars are taking my lane. And it seems like they don't think they can actually fit into their lane that has been provided to them. Or they just don't know, they don't care. I don't know. I ding my bell at them, I scowl, but it doesn't do much good. And that happens frequently all the way out Broadway. Anytime there's a right-hand turn, whether or not, sometimes it's the fact that I've pulled up to the stop sign, I'm in the lane, but the car doesn't feel like they can get between me and the curb. So they sit back there. And that's fine. If there's only one car and that's what they want to do, that's fine. But then maybe there's another car behind them and another car behind them. Then you get a lot of irritated people, and I'm on a bicycle. So I really think protected lanes needs to be our next step that we should focus on. It also will stop the other thing that happens is my wife is a little shorter and she'll go over to the curb so she can put her foot down on the curb and it's a little easier for her. So then she's over here and I'm over here. We're really trying to convince a car to go between us. That's usually not going to happen. So I think that's it. I also want to comment that I'm glad we have a new bike share program. I did join. I'm now a founding member. And it was really awesome Monday after a good game of darts at the King's Head to, instead of riding my bicycle 1.5 miles back home uphill in the cold, I just walked around the corner and got on a bus because I took a bicycle from right outside my house all the way down to a half block from the King's Head. So I'm really glad that we've got this going. We're now following the footsteps of Denver, who is now with their bike share implementation realizing they need to do protected lanes. So we should follow in their footsteps. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you.
Michelle, would you like to come back?
I have a question for Mr. Hoyer.
Oh, Mr. Hoyer, yes.
As I understand it, on Broadway, there is enough room between the bike lane and someone making a right turn lane, unless there's a wife standing on the curb or leaning against the curb. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But people don't go into that lane, or what is the problem exactly?
No, they if they see a bicycle, not all people. Many people will go past, and I frequently turn around and try to motion them past. But they just feel like their car's too big. I've driven 20,000 miles a year for 20 years or more. And I see people who drive small, tiny little cars that think they're still in a 1957 Cadillac. So they have no concept.
So it's
of the
driver
size of the car.
confidence that's the problem, not anything having to do with the size of the lane or
Exactly.
the bicyclist there.
Exactly.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
just their fear. So.
Thanks. Ms. Glickett. Commissioners, if you'd like to either ask questions or make comments to put the procedure forward, that would be great. Let's start with Commissioner Anderson.
I guess following up on the last public comments, actually, I just want to start by saying this is so exciting. This was so. First of all, it was an awesome report, but there was obviously a lot of joy in what you got to report, and so it was. I feel like the city and the council and staff and the community should be really proud of what Santa Monica has done and what it's doing. You talk a little bit about the next year and the protected bike lanes. 17th is proposed to be a protected bike lane, correct?
Mhm.
So that was super exciting. I think that is a perfect priority for us. Can you help us with kind of beyond that? Where else the plan anticipates putting protected?
Let me put that up real quick. I say that and then. Wow.
Do we need Kyle for this?
No, I figured it out before. New slide file. No. F5. It still works.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer.
Yeah, no, of course I want to go to the end. But so what we've really just been talking about is that 5-year progress.
Right.
And we do have a 20-year plan. That 20-year plan on the physical end of it, those are more protected bikeways. Those are the bigger moves, the neighborhood greenways. That's a bike path on San Vicente, not just bike lanes. So that is definitely the future. That's a little ways out. And right now, my focus, like many of us, is about this next year and the train and connections to that train and how we capitalize on bike share and the train itself and these mobility, initiatives that we're doing. One of the things that we have to continue to do is education. And that's a big one for me this next year. We've got a lot of newbies on those beautiful green bikes, and they're excited. They're remembering how to ride, but there are a lot of things they're not quite aware of. So that's certainly something we're going to keep pushing for, and I'm looking forward to working with the police department a little bit on a campaign for that. But we'll continue to do our efforts with Bike Share. We're going to have a new group that we get to outreach to. Everybody signs up. We've got emails. We know who you are, so we're going to be able to do some more focused education with them. A lot of design efforts coming forward, but not really, the physical projects. Green paint, I didn't mention that, and I know that's a big highlight here, is probably a good 20 miles of green paint will be coming in the next year, where we're going to, again, won't be all protected, but we're definitely going to be highlighting those bikeways that connect to Expo and that kind of run up and down the middle of the city, the more the commercial corridor and those connections. We've learned from Ocean Park a lot, and a lot of folks feel more comfortable on those bikeways. So I'm rambling a little bit, but I think I wanted to give you a little bit more.
I think that those are the supporting the Expo line and first mile, last mile is the right priority for the next year. I think Mr. Hoyer raises a good point, though, that there is that whole other kind of cohort of people that we want to try and move to cycling. That it's much, they're still feeling hesitant. They're still feeling that it's not safe. Green paint will help. I know, I mean, I've had an experience, I had that, which I feel like I've shared before, which is like, I was cycling on 2nd Street and went over to 2nd Street and suddenly there was green paint and it was a thrill. I mean, I felt safer that, you know, people, it was clear that I was in a bicycle lane. So, but that's not going to work for everyone. So, you know, really, I think those protected bike lanes are going to be critical to, right, I think it's important that we support people's use of the Expo line, but there's a lot of transit and transportation within Santa Monica that can be done on bicycles. So, you know, trying to figure out a way to get more people to make those trips on bicycles.
So Commissioner Newbold had a comment.
You just said something that this is the 5-year update, and then we have not. What did you say? In 20 years, there's going to be.
Yeah, so the
do
plan,
we not have like a 10-year plan? We don't have.
We didn't. We did 5-year and 20-year, and the
remember.
5-year was really to. I mean, there was a lot of momentum happening with the land use and circulation element. We wanted to build on it and have some solid, you know, projects ahead
But
of
I'm
us.
wondering, do we need? Would it be productive to have?
The next.
I mean, 20. In 15 years, I guess it's not that long, but
Right.
to have a 10-year or another 5-year and a 10-year just to organize priorities. I don't know how you do that if you just have everything can be
Well,
done.
I think the central question here tonight is, you've got a target of 15 to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get there next year or even by 2020 doing what you're doing? I think the answer is no.
I think that the bike plan, although it was very aspirational and laid out a lot of good things, you know, it didn't say put a protected bikeway on, you know, Broadway. It didn't include that. So there are some things that we're learning over the past 4 years and we're hearing, and, you know, a new bikeway is actually officially adopted in the Highway Design Manual, which doesn't mean a lot to you, but there are new things coming online, and that's the protected bikeway that wasn't even there, you know, a few years ago. So we could, I mean,
okay.
I'm with you on you know, that is a big, and how do we proceed?
I'll take that as a no.
Okay.
No, but I mean, it's a simple question. We can't get to where you say we want to get to doing what we're doing, so we're going to have to do something else.
We've got to retool a little bit. I mean, there's still a lot of great things to come, but 15, you know, I don't want to sit here and be like the downer on this. I'm really thrilled about the bike program and where we're headed, but it was a big number. This is you know, this is not your average city. We're not your average city, so that's why we wanted to aspire to those things. But you know, the bike plan was also done in a year, and it was a little early on. We're seeing so many more things develop out there that we didn't have before. So there's definitely room for.
So Francie wants to say something.
Yeah, it seems like now was the right time to talk about kind of a broader momentum in the city, and it's I think it's part of why we feel enthusiastic that things are changing and why you do see so many faces here. Kind of people wanting, you know, new people on staff who are excited about this kind of big change, and council, when they were thinking about their prioritization, identified a new model for mobility as one of the top 5 priorities, and really it was one of the top 3 if you look at the votes. And it's really been a sea change here in the city. There's a lot brewing, and it's been not enough time for things to kind of bubble up yet, but there's just a lot of energy and interest and discussion about how we need to change to embrace a different, more sustainable future for our transportation network, and not to the exclusion of people being able to have diverse options, but rather the embracing of diverse options instead of always picking up car keys, that people in Santa Monica will feel enabled through protected bike facilities, through all these other things, to choose other sources. So the council has adopted these priorities, has signaled their intention to support changes in the organization, to see them move forward, and asked for specific metrics to come forward, you know, in the next couple of months, that are 3 to 5 year metrics for the city for a new model of mobility. So what you're going to see happening is that being developed and that coming up and being guiding lights that then are part of what are guiding the pedestrian action plan implementation and the bike action plan implementation. And yet they will build upon those two documents, right? They will build upon those two policies. But I just think it's important to acknowledge that this organization is changing around this strategic initiative. And we don't know exactly in what way yet because it's too soon. But I wanted to just put that out there. And I'm happy to keep you updated as it does develop more and more.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson, are you finished?
I think the last thing I wanted to say was I had no idea that about the overpass over PCH to the beach, and that's just very thrilling.
Commissioner Fresco, you've got your light on, so.
I do.
And then I'll come back to Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
So, is it, I mean, in terms of reaching those 30% or 15% numbers, is it that first bump we got was just sort of the low-hanging fruit, the people who were just, yeah. And so do you think maybe we would get another bump of a second tier of that kind of enthusiasm when the train comes? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think bike share has been, the start of that bump.
The start of the bump.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it's not so grim.
It's not grim at all.
It's
but
not
we've got
grim.
a lofty target.
It's definitely not
Yeah.
grim.
No,
this is a
it's
fantastic
cool.
accomplishment we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It's just how do we keep it rolling at the speed
Yeah.
that
Right.
we're being asked
Keep
to.
that momentum going.
We got to keep bringing the floor up to where the bike riders are. So, in terms of protected bike lanes, this is, the one on Pico by the high school. I can see how it might be nice if you're on a bike, but that intersection at 7th Street, and it's a lot of confusion. It's pretty kooky around there. So I'm just wondering if you can just describe what protected bike lanes are going to look like in other areas, if they're all going to be in the middle of the road like that, or...
Yeah, that's definitely a unique case where it is a bit of a gap closure more than, that one block is the way to get to the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not have to travel on Pico. You can use 6th Street or Bay Street, but before it was the median, it was blocked so that students weren't crossing the street illegally. And it also meant that, those turns couldn't be made on 7th Street or 6th Street from Pico. So students were riding on the sidewalk, not just students. I mean, they were, all of us, right, were sort of forced to do that. So now you have a nice connection from Mango, and it is a piece of Mango, and with that will come the signage that helps you understand what that protected bikeway is. But you could see that possibly on Lincoln. That was discussed in the Lincoln Corridor Plan, is a way to get us across Lincoln. And that protection would make, I think, people feel more comfortable on a street like that, getting across a street like that. The other protected bikeway, it could very well look more like the one on Michigan, which is elevated. It's an elevated roadway or a lowered sidewalk, adjacent to the regular parkway. There are some new standards coming out that I mentioned, and they'll be really challenging us to provide these protected bikeways in small areas, because that's what we have. We have really small areas where we're balancing so many different needs between our parked cars and metered spaces that are needed. I wish I could zoom in, but I don't know how to do that. Oh, look at this. Maybe this is it. One more time. Oh, that's it. That's all I got. So I wanted to highlight what that actually looks like. It's probably a little hard to see, and if you don't ride on it, you may not understand what that is. But I can imagine we might be seeing a little more of this. So basically, that's the edge of the old curb, and then out. Oh, you don't get a point. Sorry, there's a hand over here, not up here. So to the right of the cyclist is the edge, and those poles represent the old curb. And we built up a 4-inch high curb and bumped everything out. So that's a treatment that you might see. One of the other more simple treatments would be some of the stanchions that are like the posts there. So you might have one lane in one direction and parked cars on the other side of that, and maybe a curb, instead of a post. So there's, like on the Colorado Esplanade, for example, there's a small 2-foot, 3-foot wide curb that separates the bikeway from parking or travel. So there could be, there's various ways it can be done to provide that protection. And there's a lot of research on what feels best. And there's also a lot of costs associated with each of those treatments.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
I didn't have any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy, thoughts, comments?
How do you collect feedback from the community on some of these different things? We talked about the Go system, and so is that one of the tools? But what are the other tools?
Phone calls to me on a
Yeah.
regular basis, and probably a little sheet of paper that I keep with this stuff in mind as we're giving reports, as we're prioritizing things. But really, we encourage the Go system because it's an easier way for us to see it in writing and to track it, and we have to respond to it in a certain number of weeks. But people call me directly all the time.
So, but people can use the Go system to report,
Absolutely.
hey, I've used this, gap closure a bunch of times and it really isn't working, or okay.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
contacting you. So those are definitely good ways. Maybe there's ways that we can improve on that. Maybe there's something else that can be done to provide the community with more communication options, maybe through the schools and notices that go home, or some other way, that parents can communicate about how they feel about whether it's protected bike lanes. I mean, people in the community sometimes say to me, "Hey, why are they doing this on 17th?" I recently had somebody say that particular, 16th over by Lincoln Middle School is so wide. Why 17th? Why aren't we bringing the kids down 16th? And even if they have to go back, south of Wilshire on 17th or something, but it just seems like people in the community have comments, and I don't know if they know how to get them to the right place. So I will definitely tell the community about the Go system
Yeah.
and using that, but maybe there's other things too. Maybe on the web, aside from an email, maybe there can be a comment box or something like that's really clear.
Our webpage does say, who to contact for certain projects. On the bike plan, it has my name. I don't think we've had a lot of hits on that webpage, so it would be nice to, freshen that up and see what we can do to make it a little bit better.
And then my main comment on it is, I would say, to help us get to the goals would be to prioritize, generally and specifically, connections and consistency. Closing gaps and doing, I'll just use your word, the kooky 7th Street thing. I mean, I've written it, and it's kooky, and it kind of, you're there, whether you're alone on your bike or with a group, you're still not quite sure how it's going to pan out with the cars when you're going to cross over onto Pico. But I ride a lot north to south and south to north, and I find sometimes it's green and sometimes it's not, and so I would say that consistency will maybe help things and maybe help us reach our goals. So if we focus on closing, if we've started a project, finish that project as soon as possible, make the longest amount of, accessible bike area on one path, get it finished before moving on to something else, so that there isn't 30 different pieces, and everyone's saying, well, it served me great for 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Focus on the connections and the consistency, but also don't be afraid of try to feel fearless about if there was some kind of gap closure or connection that you made that maybe isn't working, or that looked good on paper but isn't, suddenly, so there's something about it that isn't going to pan out. Don't be afraid to say, well, we have to change course on this, and there's a better way, and maybe it's a little late, but if it's not too late to go ahead and make the changes, maybe it's better sometimes to say, let's change direction on this than, well, let's just try it, but then it's that hundreds of thousands of dollars, for something that maybe is kooky. I don't know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that feedback. I wonder, signage, I heard, could be helpful here. Is there something else that you guys think that might, just a mango sign that kind of gives you a wiggle that says
signage, I think, would definitely help. For me, I think that's what the words that popped out for me were hearing feedback from the community, but also as a bicyclist, we're
Yeah.
just the consistency, because like
Mhm.
you'll go a little bit and then, where you're riding changes and the environment changes. And so
Yeah.
to kind of, let's keep striving to close
Okay.
gaps in consistency, I think will help.
The other thing I didn't mention is Santa Monica Spoke. They certainly get a lot of feedback. They are our bike advocacy group, and their feedback comes to me on a monthly basis, or bi-weekly sometimes. So, they're also working out there on improving biking every day. So that's another group. We've gotten a lot of emails recently. It's been really great. People are so excited about being in Santa Monica. They want to volunteer. They want to help bike initiative, So it's a good time, but I didn't want to discount that because they're really a big piece of that feedback that we get and work with them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Newbold.
I don't really have much to add. I mean, I think when I think about my biking and what would make me bike more I think it is the protected bikeways. I mean, I guess it's just sometimes it's not that pleasant with the car exhaust and car doors maybe opening. I just find it a little
Daunting.
daunting. I'd like a little more greenery and not just the painted green, but just it feels a little
Like
bit
a better
like you're
buffer.
with the cars and
Yeah.
and I still find it so easy to drive in this city and park, and I know I'm in a minority, but I still think it is so easy and not expensive enough that it's certain people aren't going to get out of their
I'm going to
cars.
work on that.
I've been working on it. Every time I have the microphone, I talk about it. But
Commissioner Parry.
The progress is just fantastic. It's really great to see these numbers continue. When do you expect the bicyclist count to be available?
So we generally take them during the fall, so they're probably finished, but a lot of analysis happens afterwards. So probably maybe March or April. We often do recounts if things don't look right. We have to then select another month after the holidays to do a recount, and then we're looking at those numbers again to make sure, they look good. It'd probably be, like I said, maybe March or April before, we felt comfortable doing some more analysis on those.
And then someone that was interested in hearing what those numbers are,
Certainly.
how would they find out?
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about that as I was listening to the PED plan and getting more of this information online. I don't think that's, we can easily put up some of this PowerPoint alone and include some of that data. It should be, so it's Santa Monica, it's bikesantamonica.org is our website, where you can find reports and also some of the project information and updates.
Okay. And I have two details that I want to ask about, comment on, which, if I remember correctly, are two things that I asked about and commented on last time it came through. The first is this drive alone statistic, where, tell me if I'm reading this correctly,
Okay.
that our baseline is from 2010, looking at large employer commute plans, that 66% of employees were driving to work alone. Is that right? And
That's
then
correct.
and then in 2013 that number dropped to 61, and the 2015 number is down to 59%.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about hundreds of trips. What do we?
Oh, that's a good point. I could follow up and get back to you with that group. I don't know the total number of employees we get the tallies from. Yeah, that's a good point, though. We could equate that to trips rather than just a percentage, because it doesn't sound like...
It seems very impressive,
Right.
and I would like to really, and I think everyone would like to have an understanding of what
Okay.
changes are actually happening out on the streets, because this is, again, it looks very, very impressive. And the only metric that is not so impressive is the bike valet.
Yeah, that did go down. That was a bit of a surprise. So we've obviously had more bike valet at events, but the total numbers of bikes parked went down considerably.
And
Yeah.
No explanation.
I'll tell you my theory. I don't know if you've ever been to a Pure concert, is that not all the bikes get counted. We had so many bikes this year, but a lot of them weren't necessarily in the corral. They were locked to everything under the sun. So we did do some effort. We tried to retool things and add some more, attendance and try to, get a better service time. So some of those things, that's a big one. A big number comes from those events in particular. And we did see, and we tried to retool towards the end to kind of, get our service times up and make it a little bit more pleasing for folks and convenient. That's one of the things.
And going forward, bike share might mess with the numbers as well.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is important to measure what's important. And that may be not the best measure, but it certainly was years ago. And that was one of our first big kind of pushes and making bikes come to the forefront. So we have great stats on bike share, boy. Those, we can see at all times at any moment, like what's going on with bike share. So we'll be able to bring, a report for that as well and see how that's doing.
Right. Well, congratulations on all the great progress. Congrats to us
A
all.
lot of folks behind it, not just myself. Thank you.
So at the outset, in thinking about this, this has been a remarkable transformation of this city for what it was 5 or 6 years ago, when people thought we were doing pretty well, but the resistance to even having a bike plan or committing money to a bike plan was quite strong across all the departments of the city, bar yours, of course. And the key is making it safe and easy to bike. It's never changed in my mind. When it's safe and people feel that they can just roll out and get on a green bike lane or a protected bike lane, or the infrastructure takes them everywhere they want to go and it's connected, there are no gaps, their kids are safe going to school, they'll do it. And the evidence is, when the plan came down, people were excited, and then $2 million went into it. The bike centre opened, and the prognostication was it was never going to make money. Well, it blew past those prognostications and started to make money very quickly. It's the biggest bike centre in the country. So when you put the green lanes out, suddenly people started to ride on them in increasing numbers, and we saw the hockey stick uptick. You've got the bike share that's been is now outpacing every other city around the country for same size sort of cities. Bike It Walk It Day was the best success of this all over the country. So it does seem to me that there's an installed base of users in this city, whether it's the people who are going to work or the people who just want to use a bike for recreation, and somehow we have to unlock that. And it's a combination of the incremental things that you've been doing and that we'll keep on doing, and it's also some big things, because when we see the big things, it sparks the interest and it drives the faster adoption. And so I do think it's a remarkable testament of how well you've done where we are today. But to get to this bigger number, which goes to what we're here about, which is circulation and traffic, it's that bigger loose goal of getting people out of cars, no new net trips. We did the pedestrian and we put some targets in there and we worked out how much money would be needed to drive a bigger thing. That's the thing that I'm really focused on, which is how do we get to that 15%? Because then you're really starting to take some traffic off the roads. If 15% of people who are going to work are in bikes and 10% are walking, hey, now we're starting to make some real gains. And it does seem to me that unless you put in protected bike lanes, an east-west and a north-south one, say up and down Broadway and along Main into the city, you aren't going to get that big bang. You certainly need to do them on 17th to connect the college to the train, but also to go north, and you need Stewart to connect that end of the city. But that's the kind of start. Now, when you talk about safe routes to school, the school people will tell you they want to connect Lincoln to the rest of the community, and they want Jams to be connected. So I don't exactly know how we fund that, but I do know that that's a goal, and that this 5 years ago was protected bike lanes weren't in the schedule, they weren't in the toolkit. And yet now we're at a point where they need to be there. That's the next big step. It's so clear that everywhere it's happened, like New York City, people are out riding bikes. I think the second thing is we have in here something that I'm really focused on, which is an open streets event. And so we're talking about doing a mile or two. And I know the difficulty has been the city structure and staff. And I would like to propose that we think about, after the train comes in April or May, that we do a car-free day in our city. That the downtown from Forth to Ocean and from Wilshire to the freeway, including all of Maine and including all of Ocean to San Vicente, be car-free one Sunday from 8 until 2. Now that would attract everyone's attention in this city, and you would have maybe 21 acres of open space for the first time that's released to the public to walk on and to bike on. And I believe it's a doable deal. I've been around the Pier and the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Santa Monica Inc., and they all sign on with reservations about the execution of it. But the key to that is that it suddenly signals to everybody in our community that we have changed direction, that we're doing a different thing here. And so I guess it's a combination of those big pieces of infrastructure, the protected bike lanes, east, west, north, south. It's a spectacular that focuses attention on a different way of doing things. And it's working out what it will take to triple the bike usage from 5% to 15% in 5 years by 2020. That has to drive us forward. And that's, I guess, the challenge to put to you. I'd like to put to the City
No
Council.
pressure, Richard. Okay.
Well, no, it's not just
No.
you.
No, it's my job. No.
But I feel as if we need to be saying to the City Council that after 4 years, we really need to rethink this bike plan and what we're doing in terms of bikes here if we want the impact that we say. And what was striking about the climate change conference was the dawning realization that to actually make deep changes in sustainability, you need to do deeply different things right now. This is what plays into this. If we want to affect traffic and do something about sustainability, this is the moment. And you can't do any better than taking a car off the road. So for a whole host of reasons, I do think we need to enhance what we're doing. The question is how best to do it. Motion from us, wait for something from you, or a motion calling on the council to reflect and ask us to do something. I mean, that's, I guess, Francie, what do you think? What do you think, Michelle? Because we've all expressed that, protected bike lanes and so on, and we'd like to see
I
this
think
progress.
it's helpful to hear what we should be prioritizing. Like you said, we don't have a 10-year plan, so that's one of the things we're looking for. And I wanted to inform you of our progress, but also hear from you. And a lot of people speak to you about these things. So
the other
I
thing,
think that was
Commissioner, is that
helpful.
resources tend to follow goals, and if we don't have the goals there, the resources will not be allocated internally. And we're trying to change a construct here, and the construct is clearly altered very dramatically, even with small amounts of money. Imagine what if we actually did something in terms of infrastructure and attention could happen. Mr. Martin.
Yeah, so I think the best thing would be for the Planning Commission, if
should they choose to,
yes, to make a recommendation to City Council expressing what you think should be happening now and in the near future on bike plan implementation. With that, the council, of course, has to consider all the priorities and figure out where your recommendation would fit into that. But I think if that's what you want to express to the council, then that would be the appropriate way to do it.
I guess I was just going to ask, I was presuming, and maybe I shouldn't presume, that we'll have another 5-year plan at the end of this 5-year plan.
Well, yeah, we were just talking about, when does the plan get updated and when does that happen? I don't know if you have any more to add to that, Francie, but.
No, I think when we were preparing it, we really expected to be guided by the next 20-year vision, but not to the exclusion of refreshing certain things and adapting and doing some minor updates. I think it's really about kind of what's the scale and the scope of what's needed. Is it it probably doesn't need a vast overhaul at 5 years. It probably just needs some refreshing and maybe some thinking about priorities and kind of guiding things. So I don't think we had anything firmly laid out. You could sort of intuit maybe from the 5 and the 20 that maybe after 5 is when you would think about getting there, and we're at 4, so maybe it's time.
Yeah, it would seem to me that a 5-year plan is just like we were doing with the pet action plan, just another way to set priorities. And given the nature of the funding, right, you need to be planning out a handful of years. So, I mean, maybe that can be one of our recommendations to council, is to
Well, I
or
guess
do a 5-year work plan. I don't know what we call it, but
Well, I am feeling this out, but maybe we request the council to consider directing the planning department to begin work on a new 5-year plan, given the success of the plan to date,
Right.
and the adoption of the new circulation priority of the city council, so that we can update or refresh the bike plan within the next 6 months or whatever. Commissioner Parry.
When you say a new plan, you mean make an update to the existing
Oh,
plan?
absolutely. All this work, this phenomenal work, is done. The real question is, there are new things like protected bikeways. There's new metrics. Vision Zero was something that was not in vogue 2 or 3 years ago. And it was an uncharted water 5 or 6 years ago. And now we've seen that every time you introduce something, more people go and get a bike and get on it, like Mr. Landris was talking about. He was activated by the critical mass. Others, and we shouldn't ignore that. I think the traffic and the circulation in the city is so overwhelming, we need to tackle that too.
Yeah. So I think 6 months could be a bit of a challenge. Like,
Yeah,
that list is only probably half of what's under my name, or maybe a quarter of what's under my name on a wall in Francie's office. So, you know, that's, I didn't mean to make you feel bad. They're all good things. And I have help. I do have some help. But I think 6 months might be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I think we do need to manage expectations a bit. You know, we have 2-year work plans that are full. So, yeah, I think your recommendation to council, that's fine. And then they could direct us and we could figure out when we can fit these kinds of things into our future work plans. But as Michelle says, I think 6 months is not
Well, why don't we
reasonable.
make a recommendation that we ask the council to renew or revisit the bike plan and set a new 5-year plan of implementation, given the success of the current bike plan and given the introduction of new concepts into road planning.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Newbold.
So I was just going to ask, would it be more focused to say something like we recommend that council prioritize, 1 or 2 protected bikeways in the next, I don't know how that works, but I know that funding is difficult in the next 5, to be completed in the next 5 years or something.
Well, I think you could direct an update, to the 5-year plan with an emphasis on certain things. If it's
priorities like that.
I was
if your
about to say
priority-
yes. Why don't we take what you just said, with a focus on protected bikeways and your comments and put them together, and that would be a good motion. Would you like to move that? Or did you? Okay.
No, it works.
So, Commissioner Anderson, thoughts? Well, you've got your light on, that's fine.
I know I have something stupid to say, but can I?
No, go to hold it then. You don't have to say that.
No, it's just, I have a great idea for your car free event is making me think of this other idea, and because I sit up here, I get to share my silly ideas, which is could we do a day in Santa Monica, a car-free day in Santa Monica, where we're like encouraging the entire populace to travel by some other means than a vehicle. I mean, it would be fascinating to see how people responded. And I'm sure lots of people would take advantage and get in their car, but...
It's going to make it really easy to drive, but we'll try to do something.
Yeah, I don't know. Because theoretically there's fewer cars on the road, and to just see other people, traveling by walking or transit or biking. So.
I thought that was a brilliant suggestion, not stupid at all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Don't ever put yourself down.
I think, it's just like one of those opportunities to make people feel...
Do you have the motion? Do you know what we're recommending?
I don't know if you wanted to revise it or if that's something you would
I don't think so.
recommend to
You
council.
heard the tenor of the things that we said. Do we need to take a roll call on this? Or just move voices? Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say no. Carried. Okay. Future Commission agenda items.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Sorry.
Go on.
Okay.
I'll just, we've had several items come to us, and I'm glad that it's coming to us in at least some form or fashion. I think it would be useful making reference to the well-being project, include it as a kind of more comprehensive discussion of ways in which the issues that are within this commission's purview, these ideas coming from and problems that are identified in the well-being survey, that we receive a presentation on it so that we can apply it to individual projects, whatever things that are coming before us. I think it would be a useful discussion, so I'd like to suggest that we hear it.
Okay. Put that on the list. Commissioner Anderson.
I wanted to raise, we received communication from the public, and it was received in the context of the Downtown Specific Plan, but it's really about this new state legislation which is going to shift the way that traffic is analyzed in environmental reports and EIRs and mitigating negative declarations and things like that. And I guess I think this potential shift is really going to be important in Santa Monica because the way that the LOS analysis that happens now, I think inadvertently kind of penalizes exactly the types of developments that Santa Monica is seeking to achieve. I also think that in having a side conversation with staff that this is going to be an extended process to adopting this, and I guess I'm wondering if staff could maybe just, if there's a way to do a short presentation to us just to begin to educate us and the community about this change.
Okay, it seems that's the case. Any other further announcements? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night.